Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.
Doctor, thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back.
Cool shirt, by the way.
Oh, yes, Miles Davis.
Yeah, how? I want to think you might have done that for me.
Well, I actually did. I put thought into that.
A little bit, anyway.
Yeah, because I just, I love the vibe here and all the great artists. And so we have a shared history in that we were both formerly in music.
Yep.
And so I bought this shirt like last week. And so I was like, I got to wear my Miles shirt.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, man.
So, lots to cover here. How are you still maneuvering through the pandemic as usual? It's been about 8 weeks, I think, since you were here, or 10 weeks since you were here last time.
Okay, so I would say things are good. I'm always careful when I say this, but I'm actually enjoying it. I am enjoying the pandemic in the sense that it has completely changed my daily life. Right, so I don't go to my office anymore. Primarily, unless there's an emergency, I don't go to my office. Mm-hmm. So I'm 100% working from home. My wife is 100% working from home. As you know, we have a 14-month-old baby at home, and I am seeing things that I definitely wouldn't have seen.
No question,
because I'd be at work. I'm a workaholic of the highest order. It's a problem. I work constantly. And so being able to work at home has completely changed the dynamics of all my relationships in a good way.
Okay.
Because so I'm an introvert. I am a homebody.
You are an introvert.
People don't believe this when I say
I have a hard time wrapping my head around that.
So what's interesting is I'm not at all, well, I shouldn't say I'm not good at it. I think I'm relatively good at conversations and
no question,
crowds and stuff like that. But I don't have a lot of interest in it. Believe it or not, if there's a big crowd of people over there and I'm over here, I'm going to choose not to go over where all the people are because I just like the peace and quiet that I can give myself. And so as an introvert, I spend a ridiculous amount of time in my office, just sitting in my office, thinking, relaxing, doing whatever I'm going to do. And my wife is an extrovert. My wife wants to be around people all the time.
Right.
So our compromise, we've come up with this system. I'm going to be in my office, and she wants to be where I am. So she and the baby, they spend tons of time up in my office, and I'm working, I'm editing videos, I'm doing research,
right,
and they're just there. And we talk and we play, and I take breaks and roll around on the floor with the baby. And it's like, I don't understand.
It's pretty good, huh?
Right. I'm like, why didn't I always do this? What was I thinking before? I like these people. You know what I mean? Like,
right. How will it change things for you going forward? You're going to still retain the office, right?
Right. So I'm keeping my office, and I do hope for the day when I can go back to seeing clients face to face, because I just believe there's something you lose when it's not face to face.
So we do here.
Right,
yeah.
right.
You lose something in Zoom.
Yeah, it's not the same. So I do want that back, but what I think this has given me is just a shift in focus. So today I just prioritize being with my family more than I did before. And I loved being with my family before, but now it's like, no, I would sacrifice a lot to be near my family. So I believe that's the thing that I've taken from this. And it's interesting because I am sort of known in my world. I'm known for the ability to reframe things, see things that normally would be negative as positive. And so I'm like, this whole Corona thing is great. It's wonderful. And people are like, what's wrong with you? But I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's slowing us down. We needed to be slowed down.
Right.
I really believe that our lives are getting a little out of hand. and that everyone needs to just kind of take a break and relax, maybe go fishing or go, you know, like sit with their family and friends for a little bit, because we're losing focus, we're losing track of what's important.
I hope that's some residual benefit when we get spit out the other end of all this. I hope. I just don't. I guess we're just inundated with so much negativity because of the dangers of the virus. That's at the forefront of everyone's mind, or the news services try to keep it there.
Yes.
I hope that, because humans are adaptable. We're a strong species, I think, and we've adapted to being confined, and hopefully we're finding the benefits of that, right?
I do believe that's true. There is a downside, don't get me wrong, particularly for young people. Teenagers are struggling right now because they're not getting the normal amount of connection that they're used to. And so young people, my practice is primarily young people, and a lot of young people are feeling an awful lot of anxiety right now. I'm seeing research that says depression and even suicide is on the uptick. So it's not all good, but if we can help people to adjust, if we can help people wrap their minds around the idea that everything you need is actually right there where you are, it would change everything. It would be a complete shift. And I really think that the one thing that we need is opposite of what's happening, which is kind of a step back from all the electronics, a step back from social media and technology, which seems counterintuitive for someone who's on YouTube and on Facebook, you know what I mean? But I really do believe we have to at some point kind of take a step back and just reconnect with people, like actual people in our lives, because people are more used to. There are people right now, many people, who would rather have a text message than a phone call.
Oh, absolutely right.
And that's,
especially the younger demographic.
Right, and it's a scary thing.
It is, and I don't understand how we got this far so fast.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you go back 8 to 10 years,
right,
Facebook was getting big and all of that, but really the impersonal way that we're communicating keeps becoming more impersonal and at an accelerated pace.
Yes.
Does it seem that way?
Yeah, and I think that's just about the exponential growth function. So once it gets so big, it takes on a life of its own. It grows at a rate far more rapid than what we could actually have kind of assumed. As more and more people get access, like TikTok and Instagram, it's just going like wildfire. And it would take a concerted effort, I think, to pull back from that.
I had an interesting conversation with my daughter. She's a senior at Moon High School, and we thought there would be some normality. You know, earlier in the pandemic, we thought by the time the fall came, they would be going to school.
Right.
That hasn't happened, so it's obviously going to be a very interesting senior year for her and her classmates.
Okay.
In trying to stay close to her and what she's thinking through all this, I did mention to her, Doctor, I said, is it really that different from the way you folks kind of maneuver your life?
Yep.
Because you're Zoom meeting, you're FaceTiming, and you're texting, little phone calls,
right.
And you were primarily kind of living that way anyways.
Right.
Is it just the added weight of being forced to do it?
Yeah. I think that there's something about not having the choice, you know,
the
like
option.
Yeah, because if I sit in my house, I mean, I could take me for an example. If it's the weekend and I don't have an appointment like this,
right,
I'm going to spend literally from when I wake up till when I go to sleep, I'm going to probably spend that time in my office. That's the way I'm just a workaholic. I just go. I don't necessarily go very many places unless I have to. And that was the case before the pandemic. But if you told me that I wasn't allowed to go anywhere, I would suddenly want to go somewhere.
Right.
And
especially young people.
Yes. Yeah. If you say, hey, you cannot leave the house, all of a sudden everybody wants to go. I mean, think about it. With this pandemic, you go into any average, like middle class neighborhood, and there are people out walking and talking to their neighbors, and they got lawn chairs out, and they're doing all this stuff. And I'm like, y'all didn't do this last year.
That's a good point.
That's all of a sudden you want to be outside hanging out. And it's only because they've been told you can't go anywhere.
You want what you can't have.
Yeah. So now you want to go outside. So that's actually why I say, you know what, this could actually be a very good thing.
Right.
If everybody suddenly remembers that we should be outside, remembers that we should know our neighbors, and that we should
talk to people.
Yeah, you know what? Let's go have some burgers on the grill together out in the backyard. I'll take it. I don't want anyone to die. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I do believe we need a cultural shift.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about that too. We didn't get a chance last time, and our last show, by the way, just so you know, I'm going to say this on camera. If it's not it's one of my highest viewed shows.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I saved that. I didn't want to tell him this off camera. I wanted to see his facial.
That's really cool.
But thank you for coming back, too. And I'd like, we talked about before, I'd love to have you back on a regular basis.
Yeah,
too.
No, I'd love it. That's cool with me.
Yeah. And I didn't get a chance to go down this road with you last time we were here. But I want to. When you say cultural shift, it's a broad term. Would you not agree? So specifically, what are you referring to? So
I believe that American culture has gone astray, and we value the wrong stuff. Mm-hmm. In America, I believe we value excessive wealth, we value fame, we value instant gratification, we value flash and show, and what I would want is for us to get away from valuing those things, right? So, in other words, right now, we have a culture where the best possible scenario is one where a person becomes wildly popular and wildly wealthy, and that is like the goal for many people. Right. And that in and of itself isn't, in my opinion, that's not very good of an idea. And so, like, right now, the Jeff Bezos of the world, they are sort of revered for being these great businessmen, when in my opinion, that's a flawed idea, like, all by itself. The idea of being, like, so wildly wealthy that, like, you control huge chunks of our culture, that doesn't make any sense unless your purpose is helping other people. If you make that your life's mission, then go ahead, be a billionaire. But, if I, not that I am getting ready to be a billionaire, but
he's lying.
if I suddenly had $100 million today,
he's got that, by the way.
I'd give it maybe 6 months before I give it all away. And people think that's crazy, but I believe in my heart that the desire for that kind of wealth is flawed, right? And don't get me wrong, because when someone hears this, they're going to say, well, wait a minute, you're talking about giving away all your money. Is that like socialism? Are you talking about...
No, not at all. And that's philanthropy.
Right.
That's me.
What I believe is, I always try to break things down to, okay, if we were all 5 years old at the playground, what would you want us to do? And so imagine you've got someone who's 5 years old at the playground. He has all the toys, right? He owns all the toys, and everyone has to, like, rent toys from him. Or when they want some sand, he charges them $1. If you saw that on the playground, you'd say, hey man, that's not cool. Like, what do you need with all those toys? Right. Did you see Little Johnny? Little Johnny doesn't even have a toy. Why don't you share with Johnny? Everybody knows that that's what you would say, right? But if you're 50 and you have $5 billion and you live within a mile or two of millions of homeless people, nobody thinks anything is strange about that. And my question is, how does that make any sense? Why would you want to be that wealthy when there are people who are that poor? It's just not kind. It's not loving. And so what I would want is a shift toward a culture where we value our connections more than we value our stuff. Right now we're valuing stuff.
No doubt.
And you know, the acquisition of more stuff is somehow cool in our culture, our society today. And we sort of revere, I mean, think about it. Reality TV, it's watching a bunch of rich people live. That's all it is. We just watch them live. And we are enamored with them. And I don't begrudge rich people. I do one day want to be rich. But I want to be rich because I'm like, think about how cool it would be to be able to like give a bunch of money to my high school, and like, what if I could
make a difference?
Right. That's what I think about. I think about all the cool stuff that could be done.
Right.
And so, you know, and I got this, I had a conversation with an African guy. I told you, you know, so he talked about his collectivist culture and how you could do whatever you want, but people just kind of frown upon it if you did things that were perceived.
It wasn't admired.
It was not admired. It would bring shame to you and your family if you were just super selfish. Mm-hmm. And that's what I would wish for. I would wish for a culture where it's like, oh, you're a billionaire? Oh, geez. You know what I mean? Like that's what I would want. Right. Because why would you want to be a billionaire? Like, what do you need with $1 billion? Like, once you get to, I don't know. I mean, I always think to myself, how much money could I really use in a lifetime? You know, give a few million to my kids so that they have, you know, they're set up and can buy homes and blah, blah, blah. Put a couple million in the bank for a rainy day. After that, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like,
you're staring at it.
Right.
The number on the computer screen.
What are you really doing with that money? You know, because like some people might say, yeah, but what if I want to buy a yacht? Well, okay, cool. Go buy a yacht.
There's always going to be, like we talked about that, there's always going to be someone willing to take your money and putting a high enough price tag on something superfluous, right?
Right. And so I'm like, you know, because one of the things that I've learned is I've become a car person. I was never a car person.
How'd that happen?
You know, when going from poverty to doing okay in life,
yes,
has created some really interesting revelations for me.
Okay.
So when I was, you go back 25 years ago, I was poor.
Okay.
Like welfare, struggling to feed a family, poor, real poor. Okay. And today I'm doing relatively well. And there have been real serious adjustments that I've had to make in my thinking because I've come to realize that, you know, when you're poor in America, you idolize wealth and you want certain things and you think that's going to fulfill you. And
you've been sold.
Right. So when I got a little bit of money and decide, okay, I can do this stuff. Pretty much right now, I could do almost anything that I want to do. If I want to do it, I could probably get it done. But like, you know, realizing, okay, I want a big cabin in the woods, but realistically, how often would I go? Not very often because I always work, right? And so then why would I buy the cabin? If I want to go and spend a weekend in a cabin, I'll rent a cabin. Right. I don't need the cabin for myself because it would sit there.
You don't need to own it.
Right. And so like, you know, when I went to LA, last time I went to LA, I rented, what did I rent? I rented a Corvette. Mm-hmm. Okay. I've rented a Mustang. I've rented, you know, like for a weekend to feel what it feels like to have that stuff. But I don't need them all. Like, because you can only drive one car at a time. Right. You can only live in one house at a time.
Wear one pair of jeans at a time.
I mean, Yep. You know, and my wife makes fun of me because I pretty much wear the same clothes every day. I'm just a creature of habit.
You too, eh?
and so I'm like, so what are you going to do with all the stuff if you buy all that stuff? If you own 7 homes, what are you doing with them?
Yeah, that's a recipe for wealthy people to become broke.
Right. Like, not only that, but like, isn't there something else better you could have thought to do with it? Like, you know, I mean, I just feel like if we shift focus toward connection with other people, and if I value my community more than I value my bottom line, suddenly the world changes. Because, you know, it's like thinking of life as a team sport, right? If we're on a basketball team and we're playing in this game and I got 100 points tonight, but we lost, my 100 points isn't actually all that helpful. And so
to the goal.
Right, to the actual goal, the goal of us all winning together.
It's an interesting analogy. I have to come back for you. Go ahead.
Okay.
I know where you're going, but I want to throw something at you.
And so my idea is, if I value making sure everybody's okay, I want to make sure everybody wins. Right? Because in this analogy, there's no losing team, right? It doesn't matter what it's us against life.
Okay.
Right? So if I make sure everybody wins, yes, I'll get less points. But if you're doing better, that benefits me because you're happy, so we get to have cool conversations. Think about it. I mean, you being in the position you're in brought me here. We're having this conversation. People hear it. Life is better for somebody because they might be like, oh, wow, that was cool.
I would like to think life's a little bit better for us too.
Exactly. And so if I forget about you and don't care, right, then who did I help in that scenario?
Okay. So the converse to that would be, based upon a society of pure individualism and focusing on that,
right,
the athlete that scores the 100 points could be more concerned about his own performance and how that would yield him a contract and yield him a future and yield him a circumstance for himself or herself, as opposed to looking at it being goal-oriented and what's best for the team. And that's kind of like a little symbolic example of what's happening out in the world. Yes. Would you not agree?
I do. And my response to that is that I learned this on my wedding day. When we got married, the preacher that married us essentially said to my wife and I, your job, he says to me, your job is to make sure she's happy. And he says to her, your job is to make sure he's happy. And if you both do your jobs, you'll both be happy. And it has worked. Mm-hmm. So thus far, knock on wood, I put my marriage, my relationship, my happiness, I'll put that up against anybody anywhere on earth. I truly believe I might be the happiest dude on earth. Mm-hmm. And it's because my wife works really hard to facilitate like me having the life that I want and vice versa. Right. Now, what if we all did that? So for example, let's say I blow up. Let's say I'm wildly successful and popular. And you text me, hey man, do me a favor. Would you mind coming back and being on the show? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm too big now. I can't do that. Mm-hmm. Right. But you know that me showing up on your show is going to blow you up.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Me not doing it doesn't actually help me in any way. But me doing it helps you. Now you blow up, and then you can take care of everybody around here because you're good, and your job
you have to have that vision.
Yes.
You have to feel something
right
about that connectivity you mentioned, right? Am I hearing you right?
Yep.
And getting. Would you not agree that it's getting benefit out of the greater good, understanding the greater good enough that it affects you, it touches you?
Yes, it has to be. That's why I say it has to be a cultural shift. It has to be a shift in values because everyone would have to value the greater good. Everyone would have to value everyone being okay. That's the problem right now is many people, they don't have a vested interest in other people being okay. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine.
Good point.
A friend of mine, we were talking and I was talking about some of my research because I'm working on a book. And so my book is about the experience of wealth in Black America because there aren't that many wealthy Black people. But my friend said to me, I don't know, man, I just don't really spend a lot of time thinking about how anybody else is doing. And I thought to myself, wow, that's heavy because that's pretty much all I do.
Very myopic view.
Yeah, because once I became okay, once I got myself out of kind of poverty and hard life, now that I know I'm okay, it's no longer about me. It's how many people can I help now? You know what I mean? I've already made my dreams come true. Like I'm already good. My life has already exceeded my wildest dreams. So from this point on, how many people can I help? How many people's lives can I lift up? Not that I'm like Batman or something. You know what I mean? Like I'm not.
No, I get it.
But the fact of the matter is, my ability to do all the things that have made me successful, they do create the opportunity for me to go help other people, right? And so that's what it is for me now. That's what makes me happy. I feel excitement. I get positives out of helping others, doing good things, being kind. And so there are tons of times when I do stuff where there's no money transacted because I don't want to even feel like I'm doing it for money.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so if we could shift culture such that people stopped worrying necessarily about what do I get out of this? Or if you want to get something out of it, cool. Get the rush of endorphins that comes from helping people.
Right.
Because there is a rush. I mean,
right, absolutely.
You go to a homeless shelter and like buy everyone lunch, and everyone's going to be high-fiving you and giving you hugs. You're going to walk out of there feeling like you're going to feel like Batman, and it's going to be the coolest thing ever. And if that was enough, if that was your motivation, our life would change. The whole world would change.
Right. Right. Some people need that, and I think if there is going to be a tidal change, a lot of people are going to need that initially to get them to that more,
right?
I don't know, caring less about themselves.
Yeah, the altruistic thing is going to be secondary. You have to address.
It can show up. It just might not be right away.
Right, because not everyone is going to suddenly be motivated to help others, particularly people who feel like they're not in a good place yet.
Right. I understand 1,000%. To the spiritual person.
Okay.
This is what the argument for the folks, the God folks.
Yes.
Is that, they will say, when listening to what you're saying, we've been saying this forever.
Right.
Because the tenets of whatever scripture it is, or whatever religion, it's for the good.
Right.
And what you're describing, to become more concerned about your fellow man or woman, is in there, and I'll use the Judeo-Christian Bible.
Yep.
It's in there.
Right. It's all in there.
It's all in there. So there's an argument to be made from your religious from a religious standpoint. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. And I always say, and I don't always say, because this is something I try not to talk about very often, but I am not a religious person. And I'm not a religious person because I've grown disenchanted with what I see happening in the religious world. And I just don't even want to be in that world. However, the fundamentals at the heart of all major religions gives you love everybody, be kind to everybody, give of what you have, stop thinking about yourself. It's all there. And so I attempt to live, and it will sound a little bit magnanimous, but I attempt to live in the way that I believe the person named Jesus would have wanted us to live, or did live, or, however you want to see that. Like, I believe that it's just, when in doubt, be loving, be kind. Like, it's as simple as that. And I don't do the whole religious side of it, because I believe that has caused more problems than it has solved. But you're right that the foundation of the way I think comes right out of all those religions.
I just think about what it would take to do that seismic shift. If let's just pick a generation, the generation that's coming up now that's in grade school.
Okay.
So you focus on them and you want to try to instill different value structures.
Right.
And of course, it's hard. You can't legislate that. We've talked about it.
Right.
You can't do that.
It won't work.
No. But it has to start at home.
Yes.
And we all hope the home is there in
right.
some form that it's constructed for the child.
Right.
And it has to be a combination of their home and what they experience in the community.
Yes.
It's a seismic shift.
Yes.
So from a moral standpoint, you want to believe there's that spark in us that we know right from wrong, that we're born with that, hopefully. Maybe. We don't know.
Right. But, and there are some people who argue that that's true. Yes.
I don't know. I just think that I've always believed that there's got to be something there. Because when you're young, and you just kind of know something is wrong. Like,
right.
It's not right to go smack Johnny.
Right. You're not supposed to do that.
Not because my dad told me I'm not supposed to do that. Because Johnny cries, I kind of feel bad.
Yes.
People are looking at me with disdain. That wasn't right.
Right. Yeah.
But I still felt something.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't want to go down an esoteric road, but there's something in there.
Yeah.
We just have to really get in touch with whatever that is.
Yes. And you're absolutely right that young people intuitively know this stuff. The problem is that our culture trains them to think otherwise. Our American culture trains us to be selfish. Mm-hmm. And because we value individualism. It's all about, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, work hard and you'll have X, Y, and Z. That's America. If we could somehow teach people it's not about you, it's about us. Mm-hmm. And who's us? Everyone, right? All people. I want everybody to be okay. Mm-hmm. And if I have to have a little bit less so that you can have enough, so be it.
Mm-hmm. I think most people. Would you think most people, if they were asked that question,
yes,
would they be willing to do it?
If you could remove all of the irrational fear, because that's what's happening. People are afraid. But if you could remove that fear, people would fundamentally be able to recognize, just like I said, kids on the playground. If little Johnny has 100 toys and little Sarah has no toys, everyone knows that Johnny should probably give Sarah a couple of toys or else he's a jerk. Mm-hmm. We all know that. But when you put that thought process in place with adults, it's like, well, wait a minute. You're saying I'm not allowed to have what I worked for, and why should I give this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's because
a defense mechanism almost, right?
You start to defend because you're afraid, how far will this go? What else are you going to take of mine? And the fact of the matter is, I don't want to take anything.
Right.
I don't want anyone to be forced to do anything.
Right.
But what I would wish for is people to not choose to be selfish. Mm-hmm. Because why do I want to be... I mean, I think about it in terms of like my family. If I strike it rich and I've got hundreds of millions of dollars, but my brother and sister are struggling, mm-hmm. aren't I... like, what's wrong with me? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Why would
That's
you...
a good question to
Why
ask
would you even want
anyone
that?
in that circumstance?
Right. Right. And so that's the way I think about it. I think about how do we teach people to think about others mm-hmm. more? How do we make sure that we are loving each other?
I think even in terms of, we are at times, Doctor, so numb to charity. The reason I bring this up is you almost expect to hear, almost of the wealthy or the ultra wealthy, the ultra fortunate when it comes to wealth,
right.
folks, that when they do something of charitable, that, oh, that's nice, they donated $6 million to the cancer fund. We don't really even sit and ponder the veracity of that, how important that is. We almost give it a cursory glimpse and we get on our way.
Yes.
That's really sad.
Yes. And we stop and make a big fanfare when there's a scandal. Mm-hmm. But we don't, you're right, we don't value and talk about and lift up kindness when people are doing nice things in the world. And so that's why we don't value that stuff as much. And it's
how did we get there?
Well, I think unchecked capitalism is what does it. Mm-hmm. If you say to people, you can make as much money as you want to. You can make as much money as you possibly can make. No questions asked. Go for it. And the winner is the one who gets the most. at the end of the day, you get this. You get our culture where you're not actually being asked to consider how anyone else is doing. That's not a part of the equation.
Well, even if you talk that way, you'll have a portion of society will call you un-American.
That's right.
And I'm saying for the record, I am a capitalist fan.
Yeah, sure.
I know that capitalism has been good to you as well too.
Absolutely.
But for the sake of the conversation and what you dissect capitalism, not everything's rosy.
Right.
And unbridled capitalism has destroyed a lot on this planet. Period.
Yes.
Would you not agree?
And if you think about it, like, the rainforest and, pollution of our oceans and all kinds of things that have come as a direct result of people simply attempting to squeeze out more profit.
Yes.
And it's like,
well, that's undeniable.
Yeah.
That's undeniable.
I mean, there's really not even a logical argument against that, right? Capitalism has created a lot of problems, but people will say, yeah, but that's the cost of having these kinds of opportunities and blah, blah, blah.
But you can do it all. It can be done. All of it can be done.
I believe it can be done.
Yeah.
Because, again, what I'm saying is I don't want anyone to not be I don't want to get rid of capitalism. I don't want to stop having opportunities. I don't want
the golden goose.
Yeah. I don't want to equalize income. I don't want none of that stuff. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
What I'm talking about is a shift in values. I'm saying you can make as much money as you want to make. But my question to you is, why would you want to make $1 billion? Like, what do you need that for? And
if there was a purpose, like if and again, I'm not for heavy-handed demands of anybody,
right?
But I think I hear you're saying if your goal is to make $1 billion, what is if there was a purpose for the money? I want to make $1 billion because after the first 100 million, I want to take this 900 million and eradicate. I don't know, Detroit poverty.
Yep.
Or something.
Right.
Right.
I mean, pick a problem and solve it.
Pick a problem and solve it.
And I believe
there it is.
If you have skills that are valued in our society and therefore make a bunch of money from them, good for you. God bless America. If, however, the only thing that you can think of that will come from your gifts is your own wealth, then you've wasted your talent, in my opinion. And so you think about, like, okay, if you're blessed with the ability to dunk a basketball, you may end up being a millionaire. If you're blessed with the ability to be one of the best at throwing a football or any number of things, then it's going to put you in line for lots and lots of money. And good for you. However, my hope would be that you at least remember that the ability to throw a football doesn't make me better than people.
Right.
And it just so happens that it's a valued commodity in our culture, so I made a bunch of money from it. But my grandfather, who's a janitor, is also a good guy, and I want to make sure that his life is just as good as mine. So, I'm going to funnel some money his way. That's the way I would want to see the world, and so when I figured out that I have an above average ability to articulate a thought, I said, all right, let me capitalize on this somehow. I want to use that to gain something. But the goal in my mind, if my show takes off, if I write a book and it becomes a bestseller and I make a bunch of money, I promise you, I'm going to find a problem and fix it. Right. I'm going to say, you know what? I believe I have the capacity for this one. And I'm going to, I'm going to pick a street in my hometown and just fix it up. And you know what I mean? Because what else are you doing? What do you like?
That's always been a puzzlement to me too. And when you have these conversations, I don't know what your experience has been, Dr. Will. When you have these conversations with friends or in social circumstances, you get looked at a little bit funny because anytime you talk about wealth redistribution or anything that you're not talking about it, but anything that can be insinuated as something like that.
Yes.
Someone is fearful.
Yes.
And they use that fear to label or try to label you. You must be this kind of thinker.
Yep.
How about someone who's just a thinker?
Right.
A problem solver.
Right.
And let's apply ideas. Some aren't going to work. Let's at least try. Right. And my argument has always been that I've never understood the lust for excess.
Yeah.
And that, I think that phrase really applies to America's society now.
Yeah.
We're in an excess mode.
Yes.
Now. No wonder there's hoarder shows on TV.
Yes.
Is there a mental? You could probably talk very educated on that I could not from an educated standpoint, but no wonder there's hoarders.
Yes.
Some are probably real medical conditions, and some are just conditioned by what they have seen, observed, and lived, right?
Our culture actually, on some level, encourages it. And you know, the problem is because we value that, no one sees it as a problem. And so that's why I say we would need a shift. We would need a cultural shift so that if you've got, if you had 1,000 boxes of pizza sitting in your living room, everyone would be like, what is up with him? Mm-hmm. That's weird. But if you had $100 million, nobody would say, what are you doing? Everybody would be like, yeah, man, good for him. You see how rich he got? But it's the same amount of excess. Like, you don't need them.
Same concept.
Right. It's the same thing. What are you doing with them? You know, like, you cannot eat 100 boxes of pizza and you cannot spend $100 million. I mean, now, don't get me wrong. There are people out there who have $100 million and they're doing cool stuff. They're building schools and stuff like that. Go for it. But if you're just racking up money for fun, I'm questioning your values.
Mm-hmm. How could you not?
Yeah. I mean, especially when you walk past homeless people every day, you know? And so, yeah, my thing is I wish for a society where we just want everyone to be okay. We value and love each other. Mm-hmm. And you know, if you want a nicer car than me, cool, go have it. I'm happy for you.
Right.
You know what I mean? But nobody would get any, in my world, nobody's going to get kudos for having more stuff, nicer stuff.
And see, when you articulate that one sentence where you say, look, I'm all for your achievement, I'm all for what you want to do and how you want to live your life. As soon as you say that, that should nullify anyone from labeling your viewpoint as socialist.
Right.
But of course, that will happen.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to jump to that, and that comes out of ignorance.
Right.
I mean, not ignorance, but basically out of situational ignorance, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because people are afraid. So when you hear someone talking about giving away all of their stuff, naturally people, I think, are going to start saying, well, hold on a minute. You're giving away all yours. Does that mean I have to give away all of mine?
Right. That's how we think in this country, right?
Because it's going to be all about me. Well, wait, what about me? And I will say, no, I don't care what you do with your money. You know, I'm going to judge you a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if you told me I have 27 Rolls Royces, and my daughter doesn't have a car, I'd say, well, couldn't you get, you know what I mean? Like, that seems silly to me. Why? I don't understand why you would do that. Right. And you're allowed to. I just think it's weird. And the same is true when I think about, you know, all the billionaires in America, all the people way at the top. I wonder all the time, what does it feel like? What I don't know. Maybe something happens to you when you get to that level of wealth that I don't know about, and maybe I'll find out one day. But I think to myself, what are you thinking about? Because what I would be thinking about is, that's just not very kind that I walked past that homeless dude in order to get into the restaurant where I dropped $400 on my dinner. And I wouldn't feel good about that. I would be the person, my wife would be yelling at me because I would be like, well, let's just invite them all to dinner. You know what I mean? Like, why don't we let everybody in? We have enough money. We got all those billions. Why don't we just, you know what we could do?
And that's stupid money. I mean, it's almost like
it's silly.
It's silly. Yeah, silly money.
Right.
It's monopoly money.
Right. It's not real.
But that money sitting there is, and I guess maybe the thinking is so elementary that it's going to sound comical, but if you have $1 billion, you have to be a person of very weak moral fiber or fabric if you can't see that you don't need more than a couple million.
Right.
But I'll give you $100 million.
Right.
I'll
Just
give
for
you
fun.
$100 million.
Right.
But that $900 million can solve problems. Yeah. I don't care what your political bent is.
Right.
You can find something that should be able to make you feel okay, which helps your fellow man.
Right.
Would you not agree?
I 100% agree. I mean, you know, the way I think about it is, if you got an accountant or a research team to go into any particular city that you know of and you said, all right, let's look at crime or poverty or homelessness or pick any problem, food insecurity. And you said to this research team, put a number on it. Tell me what the cost of ending homelessness in Coriopolis, Pennsylvania would be. Right. They'd give you a number, and that number would be less than $1 billion. I promise you.
My
you
gosh,
know, I mean, so if, let's say the number is 17 million, you end poverty in this little town.
Right.
And you have hundreds of millions of dollars, and you wouldn't even miss for 1 second a couple $1 million given to this problem. Why wouldn't you just start solving problems? Like, I mean, what else are you doing? You know what I mean? That's what I wonder.
There's got to be something about the human condition when you become uber wealthy that we just don't know.
You're right.
There's got to be something that, and it might not really look that nice.
Right. Well, that's what I believe, is that there must be something really ugly that happens inside of you, and makes it so that you kind of suddenly have a need to maintain it. Once you've built it, maybe it's like, I got to keep on building this. I can't give it away because then I won't be that wealthy anymore. But in my mind,
is it peer pressure? Is it a little club? Maybe they all belong to a little club that, I don't know.
Maybe, and I would say I don't want to be in that club.
Yeah, right on.
Because I just want everyone to be happy. I want everyone to be okay. And so, you know, it's so interesting to me when I started making money. It didn't sit well with me. It was very difficult for me to reconcile the fact that I had once been truly worried on a daily basis about, like, where will I eat today? You know what I mean? Like, how am I going to pay these bills? You know, the gas man is coming to shut off the gas. Those were real thoughts in my head at one point in my life. So to have enough money to not think about that kind of stuff ever again, it made me think, well, but there are people who are still thinking about that stuff. And so there was a period of time where I would just go into random stores and like buy stuff for people. Mm-hmm. And it was because I was like, I don't want to have more than everybody. You know what I mean? Like I don't, it doesn't sit well with me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my wife kind of reined me in, and I had to kind of just realize I don't have the capacity to save the world yet. Right. But I hope that energy never dies in me. I hope that, you know, if I gain any sort of success in the things that I'm doing, I hope that I remember why I wanted to do it. Because if it ever becomes about, if you're all hearing this now, if you ever see me out just chasing money for the sake of chasing money, slap me, sit me down and say, remember what you said.
Right.
Because that's what it has to be. It has to be that when you cross that threshold, suddenly it becomes like, well, I wonder how much money I could make. You know, maybe I could go a little further. But that's not a goal. In and of itself, making money is not a goal.
I know a lot of the capitalists and the industrialists always use the concept, well, my money is invested in this company that hires people, and I get all of that.
Yes.
We're talking about their personal wealth.
Right.
Which is kind of sitting in vehicles that are just making them more money.
Yes. Right.
And not reaching out with their tentacles and helping the greater good.
Right.
Just so for clarification.
And in all fairness, yes, if you have a bunch of money and you put it into companies and those companies employ a lot of people, that's wonderful. But most companies aren't functioning like Walmart. Look at Walmart as an example. It's making a few people a bunch of money, and the people at the bottom are actually struggling.
Right.
And so if we had a cultural shift, if there was a change in values, there would be far more balance between the compensation at the top and the compensation at the bottom. And that's what you see when you look at these, massive companies or companies that are making millions and billions of dollars. There are a handful of people at the very top getting $400,000, $500,000 bonuses, and the people at the bottom are making 40 grand and struggling. And so I can't buy the argument that putting your money into those businesses is helping the greater good, because you're giving people a job, but unless you're giving them jobs making 100 grand a year, you're not helping the greater good. You're extracting value from people.
So that would get into the argument, or the not argument, but that would get into the conversation where you talk about human nature. In America, one of the older motivational speakers I listen to used to say, America's a ladder to climb.
Yeah.
America's a ladder. It's a ladder. You start at McDonald's, you wear $5 for $5 an hour, you wear the hat, McDonald's go, but that's a place to start, and then you work your way.
Right.
And I was raised believing that was the way it works, and I think there's elements of that which I think are good because you want people to be industrious.
Right. But
there's a lot of holes in that theory too, which I have observed in my 55 years on this planet.
Yeah.
So it isn't as easy as saying America is a ladder to climb.
Right.
It might have been 50 years ago.
Right. It's not
not today. It's not that clear cut.
It's not that simple, and it's also important. Even if let's say America is a simple ladder to climb, everyone has an equal opportunity to climb that ladder, and your abilities, your skills, your hard work will get you to the top of the ladder. That's not true, but let's pretend it is for a second. Even if that's the case, the way human experience works, there will be people who climb to the top, and there are people who can't climb to the top, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
The problem is, if being at the top is the only goal,
exactly right.
That's the problem.
Yep.
Because I had to learn through living that I was pretty good at certain things, and embrace my gifts and realize that my gifts create opportunities for me that don't exist for other people. And I now know that, and I cherish it, and I exploit my gifts.
As you should.
Right. The difference is the goal in my mind is not
wealth attainment.
Right. The goal is do as much good as I possibly can for the world, because I am thankful that I was given these gifts that some people weren't given. And I'm going to use them to make the world better, not just me. And it happens to me all the time when a client comes to me and we figure out that they can't pay for whatever reason, they lose their insurance or something along those lines. And inevitably, I'm going to say the same thing to them every time. Don't worry about it. And, a lot of times people are like, what do you mean don't worry about it? You're a doctor, you earned this and blah, blah, blah. And I always say it always comes back. Don't worry about it. It's always going to come back. And we talked about this.
Absolutely.
We talked about it. It's always going to come back. And so if I were simply worried about me, I would cut those clients loose every time.
But that's a hard concept for the average person to wrap around. I used to talk to younger salespeople, whether it was real estate, whether it was business. And the concept was, if you do enough good business,
right,
if you touch enough people and you help enough people,
mm-hmm.
and you help them get what they want, you can have everything.
Right.
And they look at you, it's esoteric. No, it's not.
Right.
When you hear people, not just me, but you hear people like yourself,
yep.
people that have lived in a way and they've had different kind of experiences where they've done good work for a long time and have reaped the rewards. They might not, they weren't rewards that you could put a number on or even
right.
look at the
right.
time it was happening, but you're here to tell the story
yep.
about how you've been blessed because of that work
yep.
in all kinds of ways.
Right.
And you tell that story, more people need to be open-minded enough to listen and take that to heart. That could be a seismic change. If people could understand that there's all the wealth in the world there for you in all capacities.
Right.
If you just help enough people get what they want and
right.
need.
Yeah, and it has to, on some level, not always be about you. Because if your focus is, well, what do I get out of this? Then it is hard to see the flip side.
Doubt.
It is hard to see that other piece of it. But if I wake up every morning saying, all right, how can I help the world? How can I make the world a little bit better? My stuff will come. Mm-hmm. It'll always come.
Does.
It always does. And I think that's the part that some people are like, yeah, but not really. Is it really going to always come? And
they want that certainty.
Yes, because they think if I go for mine, then I know I'll be getting mine. And
it's that selfishness, though. But Mike,
yes.
How did we get this far?
Yeah.
Selfish.
Right.
How did we get here?
And I'm convinced at this point, and I've lived a life that proves it. I've seen people pour love and support into me and seemingly get nothing out of it. And I'm like, why did they help me? But now, when I'm the one doing the helping, I realize that's what they got out of it.
Right.
They put another vessel into the world. They put another tool for good into the world by helping me. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm pouring into someone else, I'm paying back what was given to me. And I know that if I do that and I plant enough seeds, there will be lots and lots of people out there helping the world and doing more because you feel obligated because I helped you. And I'm like, that's it. That's all I needed. That's all I cared about. Make the world better. Mm-hmm. And it's a shift. It's a shift in thinking because don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with liking your own nice stuff, and because
enlightened self-interest.
Yeah, I mean,
nothing wrong with enlightened self-interest.
If someone saw me driving down the street, they would say, "Oh, okay, he says that he doesn't care about anybody, but look what he's driving." Or you pull up to my house, you'd be like,
"Bad litmus test, though."
But that's exactly my point. Because here's the thing, I grew up dreaming of driving a Mercedes SL 500 like that. The S-Class is my idea of like...
And cars are your thing.
And so one day, I don't have an S-Class, but one day I will. And I won't feel bad about that because I will know that was never like... I never put that above anything.
Right.
And so if I've helped enough people and I've gained enough success and paid off all my bills and my kids are good and I one day go and buy myself an S-Class... then I'll be just as proud as the next guy. I'll shine it up every day, and I'll drive it on Sundays, and I'll show you.
That's goal attainment, though.
Yeah, but what I would never want is my gaining that to come before my employees feeling okay.
Absolutely.
Right. So if I have
your priorities are in low order.
If I build up my business to the point where there are people working for me and they're struggling and I'm driving around in a Mercedes, then I feel bad. I would be like, why would I mean, how could that make any sense to me? That would never fit with my worldview. Yeah. And so, it's not about not having stuff. It's not, I'm not taking a vow of poverty. I'm not like, I'm not trying to be a monk or anything like that. I'm simply saying, think about everybody else too.
Have you ever seen that TV show, and I'm probably going to butcher the name because I generally don't watch TV, but there seems to be this one television program on a lot in my house when I walk in with family there, where an executive from a company or a president of a company or something goes back and they put a disguise on them. And what is that called? Undercover Boss?
Undercover Boss, yes.
Okay, so I know it's a popular show, and I'm not poo-pooing it, but it's theater, right?
Yes.
But I'm watching it with a lot of skepticism. Not that the show's reality-based or not. That's irrelevant to me. It's the concept.
Yeah.
Like, that show shows you how far detached the upper tier of an organization can become compared to what's really happening.
Right.
And then they embrace a younger person, and they might help their education, or they throw them a trinket of a car or whatever. It's almost, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That we treat it as a novelty.
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
It makes a ton of sense.
We're exploiting for a television show.
Right. And here's what's deep about that. If, let's say I'm the president of the company and I have hundreds of millions of dollars at my disposal and I have 200 employees, and I find out that many of the employees at the bottom of my org chart are struggling, and I choose to go help one of them. Mm-hmm. What about the rest of them?
Exactly right.
Exactly
right.
And why are my employees struggling?
Why are we celebrating that publicly?
Right.
That's my bigger issue. Like, why do you need to be? Right. Why do you need that?
Right.
That
why are you showing up?
Exactly.
And what's interesting is I've thought about this because I actually have this plan. Like, okay, similar to Undercover Boss, where one day I'm going to, like, go on a mission to solve some problem, show up at a homeless shelter and say, everybody come with me, or something along those lines. And with cameras and the whole bit. And I've come to realize that you do that, you're going to get 1 million views. It's going to be like wildly popular. But if the reason for my getting that notoriety is for me to make more money, and it's a gimmick that I'm using for my benefit, that's messed up. However, if I could use the fact that America's a voyeuristic culture and I could generate more money, but that money goes toward, let's see how many people we could get houses for. You know what I mean? Like, what if we got billions of views on YouTube and we generate millions of dollars? I think we could literally, like, buy all the houses that are empty in this town and we'll just give them to the homeless people. I mean, I'm behind that. But again, it's like you said, what's the goal? Because oftentimes the goal is just sensationalism. The goal is, I just wanted another show to put on TV for ratings, to make somebody some money. And I'm, so I think about, like,
it's a slippery slope.
It is. It's a very slippery slope. Because if you think about, like, Flint, Michigan not having clean water, there's somebody out there who could fix that out of their personal bank account. And, one would hope they didn't do it for the publicity, but they would get a lot of publicity.
I'm actually okay with that.
Right. If
it gets done.
That's right. If the publicity creates the opportunity to pick another town to clean and help and fix, go for it.
Right. There was a show, too, that was very popular for a long time, maybe 10, 15 years ago. Ty and a couple other people, they would go in and fix a house. Or build a house.
Yes.
I remember that show. At the end of that show.
I like that show.
I did too. At the end of that show, you were almost, if you weren't in tears, as a man, it might be a little hard to admit that. But but
I know what you mean.
But if it didn't give you an emotional response, you really aren't human.
Right.
I thought that had a lot of potential to be wonderful if it would have been a movement instead of a show.
Yes.
Right? It was the elements of what it could have been an amazing movement, and it still could have been filmed. There could have, the movement could be a show.
Yes.
As opposed to specific and storylines. And rock bands would come and donate stuff.
Yes.
And it was...
Right. And
I don't know.
And you hit the nail on the head. if it's just for the novelty of the one story that you do now and again, and you're exploiting that, and you're exploiting people's pain, and you're all that stuff.
There was a little bit of that going on.
There was, because they always want to find the story that's just pitiful enough, and what are the optics? We really want to see this transformation and all this stuff, and so we're going to make it into a real tearjerker. But you're right. If you could instead say, this is not about sensationalism. This is about inspiring people to help and band together, and we could do this anywhere. Yeah. Habitat for Humanity goes into places and builds houses all the time.
Yes, they do.
And
they don't have a TV show.
And what if wealthy people in America all of a sudden just said, let's band together and like build houses for the poor people because we're good, so why don't we make it so that they're good? Mm-hmm. It would change everything.
Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit off camera about, and we told each other we weren't going to go down the political because there's enough of that nonsense.
Yes.
But you raised a really good point. Maybe think about something a little differently than I usually have, and that's the tuition.
Yeah.
Either tuition reimbursement or eliminating college tuition. Because I've been kind of a staunch proponent not to just blanket write a check and pay off. Oh, and probably a little bit of selfishness on my behalf, like, hey, I didn't have some collegiate opportunities because I couldn't afford it.
Yep.
And it's always the me. If you set that aside,
right? Talk
to me about with no emotion. Talk about the logic behind doing that.
Okay.
With the benefits that you see.
Yeah. So canceling student loan debt to me would be a really, really good way to get a whole generation of people, several generations actually, of people back on their feet. I know plenty of people who went to school, have good jobs, make good money, and are still significantly worried about student loan debt. Mm-hmm. And it's all because our current system is predatory. It is, originally, when I went to music school, I spent 2 years at a conservatory, and I think it was like $20,000 a year, and that was back in 1994. Okay, so we're talking a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So my first 2 years of school, I got a partial scholarship, so let's say I borrowed room and board and tuition. Let's say I borrowed $20,000 a year for 2 years. Okay, that's $40,000. That was however many years ago. That debt has turned into $100,000 for me. Okay. And it's all because when I was poor, they would instantly, without question, give me a forbearance, give me,
that is insidious.
Right. And so then they capitalize the interest and you're on your way. So that I did the research. My original debt was I think it was like $60,000 total from all of school. But I've been paying on it faithfully for the last 15 years, and it's like now at like $100,000 or something like that. And that's so I'm saying we know that the system is broken. We know that the system is predatory, and it's designed in a way that makes certain people very, very wealthy based on the idea that it's a captive audience. Once you get a student loan, you can't go bankrupt and erase it. You can't do it. They're going to get their money from you regardless. Mm-hmm. But it's making it so that people are walking out into adulthood straddled with crippling debt.
It's like mortgages without a place to live.
Right. And so you erase that, and now suddenly those people might be able to go do things in the world that they couldn't have done otherwise. And again, so when I got my PhD, it created an opportunity for me to do good things in the world. But I got my PhD through a program that was designed to increase the number of minority scholars in the world. Mm-hmm. And I spend every day of my life attempting to pay that back. And so, in my opinion, that was money well spent by the government, because the government foot the bill for me to go to school. And if we did that for people, if we said, we're going to take care of this, now you guys go out into the world and do good in the world, most of them would. Mm-hmm. And not to mention, it shouldn't have been like this in the first place. It shouldn't cost as much as it does to go to college.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope for you because you're a professor.
I'm a professor.
I'm not asking you to,
Yes.
to bash any organization.
Okay.
Let's talk conceptually.
Right.
Because as a father of a 20-year-old or soon-to-be 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, college has been part of the discussion of our family for a while.
Course.
It's fresh in my mind.
Yes.
I have and still have a hard time even conceptually grasping how it could possibly be worth that kind of money for a general studies degree or a management major or when you're talking about a business administration degree, a 4-year degree, and a major that's pretty common like that.
Yep.
With no clear technical or medical or science, just a general degree.
Yes.
I'm not sure someone entering the workforce in an entry-level position in a corporation is really helped by having that $40,000 bill.
Absolutely. There's no question.
It's not for everybody.
No, it's not. And I've said several times that we have to stop pushing that. So the one piece of advice that I give to young people is don't acquire any debt that isn't, one, absolutely necessary for the attainment of your career goal, and two, that isn't a justifiable financial decision. So in other words, if you spend $100,000 getting a communications degree, you got robbed, because that degree in and of itself doesn't set you up for an income that will justify servicing the debt that you incurred to get it. Mm-hmm. If you go and get a degree in accounting, it's going to pay for itself. If you go and get certified as a carpenter, it's going to pay for itself. If you need it for your job, you cannot be a psychologist without, you know what I mean?
Right.
So now you need it.
That's specialized.
Okay, so it makes some sense. You want to be a surgeon, you have to go to med school.
Right.
So that's justified. Right. But don't go into any debt that isn't justified by the end result. So when people go get, when they're going and getting a philosophy bachelor's degree or a psychology bachelor's degree, I say go to a community college, go to a state school.
Yep.
Or if you're on scholarship, go over wherever you want to go. But do not go into significant debt for that, because what you get in return won't justify the debt.
Yeah.
But that's advice for the student. What I really believe is that we as a culture have to push back against these universities, because it shouldn't cost what it costs.
Well, exactly right. And even it's further exacerbated now because I don't know if you saw this, Doctor, but there's a lot of in the Ivy League schools, there's a lot of families that have the bravery to talk about money, believe it or not, and they're pushing back because now these online classes at Harvard and Yale and places like that are just, the kids are home.
Yep.
They're logging into a computer, watching a taped presentation.
Right.
And they're paying that full tuition.
Right. And students are rightfully saying, this is not worth what I'm paying you.
You can find those things, master class on the internet.
Exactly.
Can Harvard professors go on there and teach.
And so then the question is, why are you spending $40,000 a year?
Well, they're being held for the accreditation to get that piece of paper.
Right.
That's the thing.
And so, yeah, I'm a firm believer in community colleges, state schools, because it's obscene. It's obscene what these places are charging to go to school.
But to hold, and that gets back to the fundamental, just my thoughts on fundamental rights. I believe it's the right of a human to have, a human, not an American, a human, to have opportunities to educate their mind. I believe in that, starting when you're this high.
Right.
To hold education or knowledge over someone's head from a monetary, it does not fundamentally sit with me. And I know that's a deep hole to go down. But on the premise of it, why would we do something to discourage a young person who has talent anyways, or aptitude anyways, and could do amazing things, not giving them an educational tool? It's a tool for society.
Well, but again, the problem is, in our society, in American culture, we don't value the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
We value individual attainment.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's the case, then you actually want things to be prohibitive. So I'm going to jack up the price of my university so that
for exclusivity?
Right, for the exclusivity of it.
Like buying a pair of designer jeans.
Right. Because first and foremost, I want to make a bunch of money. Second, I want it to be that only the best of the best are even in my, because it makes it more exclusive. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like it's the same as
Not the Ivy League.
Right. And
simply put,
it's the same as very wealthy neighborhoods. A very wealthy neighborhood wouldn't want the poor kid moving in, wouldn't want the poor family moving in. Mm-hmm. Even if there's a vacant home that no one has used in years, that community won't want certain people to be there because they believe it lowers the value of their own stuff. Mm-hmm. It's not about the greater good.
Not in those circumstances, it's not.
Right. So I believe that we would need to shift. You're right. People should want education to be accessible to everyone, but that's assuming that
at all levels.
Right. But that's assuming that everyone is valuing the greater good.
And that's the one thing that for my staunch capitalist friends of mine, the education thing has never been something I could wrap my head around because it's looked at as if you were buying a car,
right?
Or buying a pair of shoes. You know, it's not. There's a human component to education that we in this country don't value like a lot of other countries do.
Yes.
Would you not agree?
Yes. Yeah, because in other places, the culture is we want excellence among our people. And that's not the case in America.
Mm-hmm.
It's every man for himself. You know, if you rise to the top, good for you. And that's why in America we tend to not perform as well as, you know, Asian culture. And it's because it's a cultural difference.
No question.
Yeah.
No question.
And so the average Joe in America being average is perfectly fine with most people. Mm-hmm. Whereas in other countries, no.
It's not fine.
Right. It's not okay.
You're not pulling your weight.
Right. We all need excellence out of everyone. So come on. But, you know, you got to do what we need, which is everyone reach their potential. Mm-hmm. And that's not American culture anymore.
And why I love talking with you is because you are bringing out in me what is there, and that is that I have always been a free market guy.
Okay.
But I've always shunned the concept of the element within free markets that caters to selfishness.
Yes.
It caters to pure individualism.
Yes.
Pure individualism, where there's the concept of doing good for your community and society in general is not discussed.
Right.
It's just not discussed. You can have it all. We can build a society which uses all the elements of capitalism, doesn't put undue tax burdens on people, but also looks at caring about the greater good.
Yes.
It can all be there. We're smart enough as a people to do it.
It could be done.
Right?
Yes. It could be done. But it would require a lot of things. You've got to educate everyone, because uneducated people aren't going to value the rest of the world. They're thinking
they'll
about
really be left in that society. They'll really be left behind.
Yes. Yeah. So you got to educate everybody. You've got to make it so that people have a vested interest in the success and happiness of their neighbor.
Right.
And those are important things that we don't do. Right now, you know, so the definition of community is a collection of people with shared experiences and interests. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's a community. But if you think about it today, most quote unquote communities, there aren't any shared interests.
Right.
Most communities, you don't know your neighbor. You don't even know your neighbor.
That's true.
Let alone care about how they're doing, you know? And so like my neighbor went on vacation last summer, and maybe it was this past summer. But he texted me, hey, we bought this game, and they accidentally sent it. They sent it later than they thought they were going to, or something. And the game is at the house, and here we are at the beach house. And he was like, "Can you do me a favor? Go to the house, grab that box, and send it to us." And I said, "Sure." And I did it, and I took it to like the UPS store and overnighted it to where they were. And he was like, "All right, what did it cost?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "We're neighbors."
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It was like $16.
Right.
And so
he couldn't wrap his head around that.
Right. And so like what I would wish for is a world where we do that, because I believe America was like that at one point.
I believe so too.
I believe there was a time when we thought about the greater good more than anything, but I believe we have become so insulated now. We have become so individualistic.
Well, we're wealthier now financially
Right.
per person, right?
Right.
Than we were at one time.
Right. And I think that's really a big difference. When people are struggling, they tend to struggle together. But when people start to do well, they're like, "Man, get out of here. I'm going for mine."
Becomes competitive.
Yes. And so if you can keep the individual success, but also maintain that desire for everyone else to be okay too, that's how we win. But if I feel like I have to kind of distance myself from you so that I can be successful, I don't want to be successful then. If that's what it requires. If me winning, so you and I both have web shows.
Mm-hmm.
If I thought I would do better if yours no longer existed, then I wouldn't come onto your show. You know what I mean? But what I've come to realize is, no, if I come to your show and we have a cool conversation, your audience will hear about me and my audience will hear about you, because I'll tell them, "Hey, I'm coming to this other show."
Absolutely.
We both win.
Both rise up together.
And there's no downside.
Right. Right.
That's the problem. People don't realize, they're not thinking it all the way through. There is no benefit in your neighbor struggling.
Mm-hmm. That's a good phrase.
Yeah.
That's a good phrase.
There's no benefit in that. If my neighbor feels safer and more secure, then I'm doing better, because he's not worried about survival. So he can say to me, "Hey man, are you doing okay? You need anything? Because we got some extra eggs over here." Mm-hmm. Everything gets better if I make sure everybody's okay around me.
One of the mantras I was taught when I was younger that I struggled with a lot, and I'll share this with you and get your thoughts. I was taught, and this probably comes straight out of individualism.
Okay.
But I was taught that the best way I can take care of you is to take care of me.
Okay.
On the premise, it made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've gotten older and maybe just more world weary, or world experienced and maneuvering, it's a little. That phrase, "I'll take," how I can help you is by taking care of myself. That doesn't cover it all.
Right. It's incomplete.
It's incomplete.
Yes.
It leaves out a big.
Yes.
It leaves out a big part of society.
There's
connection.
There's an idea that is missing. And so the way I would amend that would be to say, in order for me to help you, I have to help myself first. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to go to the neighbor's house and help him cut his grass if my grass is overgrown. So I'm going to cut my grass first. But once I'm done with my grass, if there's still gas in my mower and I've got time...
That's the continuation that wasn't there.
Right.
In the phrase.
That's right. Right. Because there's an idea, a metaphor that I always use in my clinical practice, and it comes from the airline world. If the airbags come down, you got to put your own mask on first, right? You can't be running around helping everybody
help your
else.
Children. It's in the instructions, I think.
Exactly. It's in the instructions. Put on your mask first, because a mom is going to have the instinct of, let me help the kids, but you'll pass out, and then you're not helping your kids.
Right.
So put your mask on, and that part is true. But once your mask is on and you feel safe, and your kids, you got your kids' masks on, you got their seatbelts on.
What about the elderly woman?
And there's an elderly lady beside you that can't seem to get her seatbelt on. Now, if you don't help her, you're kind of a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people in America are like, listen, no, I got my mask on, I got my seatbelt on.
You're right.
And I'm minding my business because that is not my concern.
How did we get there?
That's a good question.
Okay, so I'm 55.
Okay.
So an immediate example of this, I went through Scouts, Boy Scouts with my dad. We were a lot of fundamentals. It was a good program. It taught me. It came at a point in my life where I don't regret what I learned there.
Okay.
I remember my parents being more friendlier to the neighbors, very friendly people, knowing more about their community, engaging more in their community than the way I and my wife live.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're bad people. We're just not, I can't tell you most of the neighbors around me.
Right.
Because of the way our lives are. So there's a difference right there.
Yes.
Right there. A fundamental difference. And I'm not making a moral value judgment on my parents versus...
It's just different.
It's just different.
Right.
We have been conditioned.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that conditioning.
Well, I think actually the reason we have that today is that the world is now smaller in the sense that it's possible for me to get on an airplane and go to LA when I want to. It's possible for me to connect with people across the country. Mm-hmm. You and I only know each other because social media exists.
Right.
50 years ago, the people you talk to every day would have been the people you live with, the people you live near. You would have watched a little bit of television but on the weekend, you're hanging out with the neighbors, you're having a barbecue, it's a very insulated thing. So as a kid, you're going to be playing with the kids on your street.
Absolutely.
And because of that, you became interconnected out of necessity.
Okay.
And today, that necessity is gone.
Got it.
Because today, I'm connecting with the people that I feel most connected to out in the world. So they may be people who live anywhere. I don't necessarily feel connected to the neighbor.
Is that choice we have really healthy for society then?
Right. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think that's one of the unintended consequences of technology.
Yes, let's talk about that because that's we did touch on it last time where it doesn't do a conservative any good for their soul or their head to watch conservative news all the time.
Right.
Doesn't do a liberal any good to watch it all the time.
Right.
Because there's no balance. There's no different ideas. And I think we're becoming more and more specific to, and it can go down racial lines, it can go down religious lines, it can go, if you're not willing to understand differences, even if they're uncomfortable, they will become more uncomfortable the more you segregate your life intellectually, spiritually. Am I right? Am I articulating this right?
Yes. So today we have the ability...
Specialized.
Yes. We have the ability to completely insulate our lives. I can say, if I choose to, I only want to hang out with, talk to, connect with very liberal, black, former musicians who are now scholars.
You can find those people.
I could do that if I wanted to.
I can find that group.
I could make that my entire, friend
group.
And people do that. But what it means is now the people that I live beside, those are just inconveniences. Those are just people that live beside.
Good point.
And
yep.
The difference is, and so this is something I study with respect to black culture, because I'm very big on black culture and understanding the world of black America. Mm-hmm. And segregation made it so that black people lived in connection with one another, and black community was very strong back then. As we integrated America, and as black people became more and more successful, they dissipated from the small communities we used to be allowed to live in. And so now you got black people living in this suburb and that suburb and doing wonderful things, and good for them, God bless America. But what we lose is the interconnectedness that came directly out of the fact that we all lived together, right? And so now there's this, the black community has kind of dissipated and it's just like spread out, and it no longer functions the way it did in Martin Luther King's day. And it doesn't function that way because it doesn't have to, right? There is no necessity to care about my black neighbor because I don't even have any black neighbors. You know what I mean? And so the same is true of America in general. There is no necessity in connecting with your neighbors anymore because you get connection by talking to people on Facebook,
right.
and all, you know, and
digital connection. They're
all digital. And so once that's the case, once you get used to driving past your neighbors and not knowing them every day, it changes the way you live. It changes the way you think. I mean, so that's one of the things that I really enjoy about...
Is the word callous right? It sounds harsh, but there's a little bit of callousness
There is. You become callous because if you no longer have to worry about, care about, think about, how is my neighbor doing, like as a lived experience, as a true concern for my neighbor because I know them and they're my friend, then it becomes really, really easy to turn a blind eye to almost anything. If you're ignoring your neighbor, you know what I mean? You know, I'm thinking about my world and my connection, and I can pull out my phone and see how my friends are doing, and I don't need to think about anything else because my whole world is right there.
Yeah, proximity doesn't matter.
Right. Proximity is no longer a thing that I think about. And so I really enjoy, and I have found, I've lived in a couple of communities where it didn't feel like that, where it's like, wow, this is a community. Right. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was a young girl who was having a birthday, and nobody was allowed to have birthday parties. And so the neighbors started texting and calling each other and saying, hey, we're going to do a parade for this little girl.
Right.
And
right.
Like every neighbors from, like, you know, around the block lined up with signs, people dressed up because this little girl liked Disney. So people had, like, I mean, they went all out.
Right.
And I was like, that's a community.
Yeah.
But that, today, that's an anomaly. Today, that's weird.
Well, the pandemic forced us into
Exactly. People are now doing that kind of stuff because of the pandemic.
That could be positive.
And I believe that, I hope that it sticks. I really do. Because right now, when I, you know, like I said, when I drive, when I pull into my neighborhood, I see my neighbors out talking to each other. Everybody's out taking a walk and connecting because you don't feel comfortable going, you know, no one is spending as much time as they used to spend out at activities because all the activities are closed down. So now you're hanging out with your neighbors. I just really hope that sticks. I do.
We talked a little bit about the God folks, those who are religious and spiritual. Another argument they have is that the shrinking size of congregations across the country, the elimination of churches, these churches were part of holding communities together. Would you not agree?
Yes.
I mean, that's a pretty valid argument.
It is a valid argument because just like community schools, community churches helped bring people together. And so you had a vested interest in what was going on with the people around you because you knew them, because you all went to church together. You all went to school together. As that changes, the idea of community changes because community will no longer be about proximity or geography. Community will be about the people I feel connected to. And that's fine. The problem is it leaves a lot of people feeling isolated, and it makes for a situation where I can theoretically literally not care about any of the people who are physically around me because I don't feel connected to them. Right.
That's scary.
Right. But it happens all the time. You go into some affluent neighborhood and ask, what are the first names of everyone within 5 houses? I'll pay you if you can find someplace where they can do it. And when I was growing up, I knew every last one of the people that lived on my street.
Me too.
And I knew the kids, knew the parents, would feel comfortable.
And I was afraid of their parents.
That's
as
right.
Well.
I would never have acted up in a neighbor's house because I knew that it would beat me home, and then I'd get it beaten when I got home,
Right.
and
Exactly right.
and the whole bit. That is no longer the case.
Wow.
Today, if the neighbor reprimands you, or the neighbor
sue.
the neighbor reprimands your kid, if there's not going to be a fist fight, there's going to be a legal fight.
Right. Which is how did we get there?
It's everyone became insulated. It's about me. Same thing with schools. I say this all the time. If, as soon as you started seeing parents call teachers saying like, how dare you say this to my kid, it changed everything.
I graduated high school in '83, and I got to know a lot of the teachers I had in high school in later years as friends,
right?
And it happened sometime in the late '80s.
Okay,
what I continually hear.
That's what they're saying. That's interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Right around '90, but late '80s, that whole confrontational thing.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you?
Yes.
Little Johnny, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
'Cause I can clearly remember being paddled by an English teacher, being paddled by a gym teacher.
Listen.
The yardstick was very popular.
I remember when I was in 8th grade. I think the last time I got an actual, I got paddled.
Right.
And it was right around there. This was late 80s. And I remember they called home to my mom. I was like, call my mom. Before you do this, you better call my mom. And my mom was like, well, what did he do? And they told her what I did. I don't remember what I had done. She was like, all right, well, do whatever you need to do.
Exactly.
Exactly. But it sends the message, you're not going to act up, and you're not going to make me look like a fool. You're not going to make us look bad. And when you wait till you get home, right? And but today, parent will be like, I dare you to touch my child. Mm-hmm. And not that I'm saying I think everyone should get spankings and all that stuff. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we have to be in this thing together. If we're not in this thing together, we're in trouble. Right. Because none of us has the ability to navigate this thing alone.
I think also parents need to value the importance of that education.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be confrontational.
Right.
There's an intrinsic value there, and if you got to bend a little bit and yield a little bit to help these teachers help your child so they can do better in life, you got to be a little take a breath.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your thoughts on it?
No, so I actually think the big issue there is it's back to being selfish. Okay. So if a teacher today calls a parent, or better yet, kid goes home and says, "Mom, I got in trouble." Today, mom's first instinct is going to be, well, what did they do to you?
Got it.
Whereas your mom, my mom would have said, what did you do?
Exactly.
Right? The assumption would be your teachers are respected adults. If they got angry with you, it's because you probably did something wrong. And I don't want you doing that thing wrong, so I'm going to deal with that. And I'm going to call a teacher and tell them that they have my support. But
you only have to do that once.
You only got to do it once. But today, so the trust is gone, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I could write a book about why that trust is gone. But the problem is, if the parent doesn't trust that the teacher really is out to help the child, then they're not going to assume that the teacher is correct in reprimanding the child. They're going to defend their own child, and then the child doesn't learn the lesson. And I talk to K-12 teachers all the time, and they say the biggest issue is parents don't back us, and the administrators bend to the parents because they don't have much choice. Of course. And so our hands are tied. But think about it. If in your house, mom says to dad, or maybe I want to flip it because I don't want it to be like, gender bias. Let's say dad says to mom, hey, little Johnny did this wrong while you were at work. Right. What are we going to do? Right. And mom's response is, well, you better not be yelling at my kid. Dad would be like, well then what do you want me to do then? You don't want me to parent? You want? Right. But That's what happens with teachers.
No question.
The teacher is not getting the support, and therefore they can't teach the lessons. If when I say to the student, don't cheat, and you cheated so you got an F, and the kid cries and goes home, and mom calls, how dare you make my kid cry? Well, the lesson about cheating got lost.
Mm-hmm. When they made it about them.
That's right. And so you can't teach that way. And so it's a cultural shift again, but it's a shift toward collective. The idea is we're in this together. Mm-hmm. I need for everyone to recognize we're in this together. And so when I'm reprimanding your child, it's because I love your child.
Right.
And I believe they needed that lesson.
It's part of the education.
Right. It's actually more important than their multiplication tables or
life skill.
Right. It's if your child doesn't learn that respect piece and learn the honesty piece and learn the hard work piece, then your life's going to be harder.
Well, obviously, too, you can make the argument, which I'm sure a lot of teachers do, that these are things that these fundamentals probably should have been instilled at home.
Yes.
First.
Yes. And obviously that's a big issue. And the problem with addressing that is you can't go into people's homes and tell them what to teach. That's the issue. You can't say, all right, everybody round up. I need you to be at home teaching values to your kids, and here's the values, because that's a slippery slope. Mm-hmm. Who gets to decide what the values are? But you're right. If mom and dad aren't at home teaching the child about honesty and respect and discipline and hard work, then the teacher who's trying to push those things is speaking Greek. Mm-hmm. And then the kid is rolling their eyes because, what are you talking about? My mom says all I got to do is this.
Yeah.
Well, we're done now.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
We're done.
Okay, two things. This will get a lot of cross looks if you ever bring this up in conversation, but I'll bring it up so you don't have to.
Okay.
As we move forward in a society, looking at the greater good, hopefully we do that, is there ever going to be room for discussion on, I hate to even say this, permission, state permission to procreate? Again,
that's
you say that. It is a heavy one.
Yeah.
Yes, because it hits so many areas, religious, human rights. I'm worried that if we don't do something to help people understand how important it is, or the weight of the decision to bring another human being into this world.
Yes.
And right now, it's unabashed.
Yes.
And that's not working.
Yeah.
Would you agree, or maybe
I agree.
Generally?
I have said for a very long time, you should have to have a license to have kids.
You've said this.
I've said this, and everyone thinks I'm crazy when I say it.
You took this long to walk into my life? I mean, I've been saying this forever and getting scorned a million times for saying it.
Here's the problem. The problem
How
is,
do you do it?
Yeah, it's impossible to do.
Yeah.
But what I have said is the ability of people to raise kids indiscriminately so that really bad people can raise kids makes it so that really bad people can raise really bad people. Mm-hmm. You know, there are some people who just suck at life, and they're just unkind. They're just not good, solid people.
But they're not breaking the law per se.
That's right. They're not.
So how do you stop them from procreating?
And what I tell people all the time, unfortunately, because in my line of work, there are often times when there's a rub against. So, all right, where does that line get drawn between neglect and abuse and those kinds of things? And I tell people all the time, there's no law against being a jerk.
Right. There lies the rub.
Yeah. There's no law about being a jerk. So you're allowed to be a bad person, and that means you're allowed to raise bad people. You can raise your kids to value greed and lies, and you're allowed to do that.
Good point.
And in fact, I believe our world currently today is seeing the evidence of the fact that our culture actually values that on some level. The person who's wise enough to dupe everyone, wise enough to extract value from others, wise enough to manipulate, they actually become very successful in our culture.
They get ahead and they become admired.
That's right. They become admired rather than frowned upon. And that's a problem. But it's because there's no law against being a jerk. There's no law that says you can't be a bad person. And I believe that you should, in order to, my opinion, if I had my way, and I know I'm never going to get this, you should be required to have a class on human growth and development, basic psychology, and multiculturalism. And
I would go for that.
All those things before you ever have a child. And
some more probably.
For good measure, I would wish for you to have a class on basic economics before you have a child too. And you would eradicate so many problems if you did that. But the problem is you can't. Those are my values. I wish for people who are educated and who are kind and who are understanding of worlds outside of their own. But not everybody values that. There are people out there who don't care that, I'll give you a perfect example. There's the movement by some to say, like, at the holidays, say happy holidays instead of saying Merry Christmas because there are people who aren't Christians and it's not kind to assume your values or everybody else's values. But there are people who say that's dumb. I want to be able to say what I want to say. Now, you could be on either side of that argument. My point is there are people who don't value kindness to others.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I say, listen, I don't mind if you say to me Happy Hanukkah, even though I'm not Jewish.
Yeah.
Because I'll know when you say Happy Hanukkah, you're being kind to me. You're showing love in your way.
Right.
So if I say Merry Christmas to you and you don't actually celebrate Christmas, I apologize. I meant nothing other than love. Right.
Well, the assumption should be there, right?
Right. But the problem is we live in a culture where that is not an assumption. And so when
to be offended.
Right. When someone says happy holidays, there are people who are angry.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Because they're like, you're attacking my beliefs. No, I'm not.
Oh, meanwhile, you just got a greeting of kindness from someone,
Right.
but you're too ignorant to absorb it.
I'm trying to be loving, and I'm trying to make sure I'm inclusive in my lovingness, and you're mad at me because that feels like an attack.
Yeah, I get it.
It's like, we're in a scary place.
Okay, so that'll bridge my next question.
All right.
And the next question is, and we did somewhat touch on it last time, but it was my fault because the conversation got steered away from it.
Okay.
Let's talk about extremes.
Okay.
I had Dr. Conti on, and Christian made this, and I should have extrapolated it more with him. But
Okay.
the essence of his point was that we, especially in this digital culture, we really grasp on the extremes in all areas of life. We consume things, and we, these people are bad because they said this one thing that we didn't listen to their whole conversation.
Yeah.
Or, that person drives a Mercedes-Benz, so he's just a rich asshole. And Or
Right.
we're quick to label, but we label based upon the extreme worst or best case scenario, usually worse,
Right.
in a circumstance where we just don't breathe and take that extra bit of time to think things through and get more of the picture. Why are we so quick to take that one nugget of information, always at the most extreme, and then label and then forget about somebody? You label them and then forget about them. You won't even go back and readdress it.
Right.
That's a big problem in this society, man.
Well, and unfortunately, that's human nature. So
Was it human nature 40 years ago?
Well, yes, it's human nature. So when I say it's human nature, what I mean is that the human brain is designed to take shortcuts. The human brain, it does that to save space, right? And so that's where all the stereotypes you can think of, they all come from our desire to take shortcuts and save energy, right? So if I see a bunch of people that look a certain way, I will make the assumption they're all the same based on whatever I believe about the people that look that way, which is why when some people see a Middle Eastern person, they're like, oh, they're a terrorist. They have to be X, Y, and Z because they're
stereotype.
It's taking shortcuts, and it's you do that because your brain wants to be able to make quick decisions. It makes you feel safe. The problem is we have cultivated a society in which there is absolutely no need to dig deeper.
Ah, okay. Let's talk about that.
Because we present a very surface level image of ourselves today, right?
Okay.
And because of that, you're allowed to hold on to those assumptions. Because think about it. You said it a little bit ago. People look for the news station that allows them to,
commonality.
That's right.
Of thought, especially.
And so,
or philosophy.
With that way of being, people are always going to be surrounded by people who think like them.
Like-minded.
Right. And you're never going to be challenged. Right. So.
Right.
So, so the perfect example is you. I remember I told you, I think you may forget that I said this. I said this wasn't what I expected. The first time I came here,
you did say that.
I said that. And I'll be honest with you. Here's why.
Okay.
I saw, I was guessing at your age, but fine. I was like, all right, somewhere around 50, white, male. And I saw I don't know what I saw, but I was looking at I bet this guy's ultra conservative. And he wants to kind of go back and forth with me about, because I get that I get it a lot. I get that a lot. Okay. So I was kind of ready for, let's go back and forth about kind of political stuff, and you're going to be on the right and I'm going to be on the left, and we'll jaw back and forth. And I was like, I hope that's not what it is, but let me go see. Mm-hmm. But because of the way I think, I came here without a guard up, because I was like, even if that is the case, we'll have a conversation and it'll be fine. Mm-hmm. Lots of people would have said, screw that guy. I don't even like that guy. I'm going to go to the person that I believe has my beliefs, and I'm going right. So I would have, my automatic thoughts about you could have easily pointed me to not showing up here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so we no longer even need to check our assumptions, because it's so easy to surround yourself with people who just think like you.
I see what you're saying. So you don't, there's no reason to formulate a deep impression of something out there, because you don't need to be around those people.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
If I choose to, my snap judgment assumption is what I'm going to go with for the rest of my life, because I don't have to interact with you.
Oh, it's a terrible way to live, though.
Right.
And we're all doing it. We're all guilty in some degree of doing this.
To some degree, yeah. Because I had my snap judgment about you, but I challenged myself, because I was like, well, okay, the invitation seemed warm enough, and why not? I need some exposure. Let's go. Mm-hmm. But there are plenty of people who, and you may get this, but I get it a lot. If I reach out to someone, I can tell they make the assumption, this show's not going anywhere. This guy's not about things that
I've had that. I've absolutely had that.
And
I've had conservatives that won't come on the show because I don't toe their line.
Yes.
But I've had ultra liberal people that wear their liberalism on their sleeve.
Yes.
And I'm not that far left.
That's right. And they're like, nah.
I don't know.
And so because of the way our world is constructed now, you don't actually have to challenge yourself if you don't want to. And
it's too easy.
It's way too easy.
Too easy.
And so
shame on us.
That's why you get people buying the garbage that is offered to them by the ultra conservative, ultra liberal media. Mm-hmm. They buy it hook, line, and sinker. Right. Because neither of those two extremes is real. Mm-hmm. It's all based on, fear and doubling down on all of your worst thoughts. But many, many people are like, yeah, that's my reality.
Why is that comfortable for a good portion of society to go rest over there? I know it's intellectually easy.
Right.
I know that, or it doesn't require much intellectual thought at all.
Right.
There's no critical thinking going on there.
Right.
So I get that. But is it really just laziness and thought?
Yeah. Well, because like we said at the beginning, I think this was even before we turned the mics on, you said people are always going to, if you give them the lazy option, they're always going to take it. And that's true.
Yeah. You would know that in terms of the field of study you're in.
Right. Intellectually, people are going to do the easy thing more often than not. And you have to have bought into the benefits of challenging yourself in order to challenge yourself.
Okay.
And more often than not, people begin to challenge themselves when they were inadvertently challenged, right? So in other words,
okay,
I'll give you an example. Lots and lots of people who are ultra liberal believe that everyone who supports Donald Trump is like extreme racist, homophobic, xenophobic. They believe if you like Donald Trump, you have to have all those things be true about you. I have, because of the way I live, I've learned that no, I have friends who simply believe in a conservative set of beliefs, and they're like, I can't allow Trump's nonsense to get in the way of my beliefs, and so I'm going to vote for him. And their life isn't negatively impacted enough for it to matter, right? And so I recognize, no, it's possible to like Donald Trump and not be a terrible person, right? But the flip side is there are people who believe I've seen it happen. People say, if you're a Democrat, you're a lost soul. I've seen people say that. And I'm like,
the vitriol is unbelievable. It's
like,
unbelievable.
It's like, how you actually believe that? Like that makes sense to you.
Do they really though?
I think they do. I think they've come to the point where, again, because you can insulate yourself. You can make it so that you're only surrounded by people who think like you, and then it makes
That's so dangerous. That's so dangerous.
It's really easy though to then say all those people over there on the other side of the street, they're all bad people. And that's why you have people who don't like black people. You have people who don't like the LGBT, because if you don't know anyone, if you don't have any skin in the game, then it's really easy to just write off a whole group of people.
Yeah, which is insanity.
Right.
It's not only is it fundamentally wrong, it's just stupid. It's just ignorant doesn't even come close to that.
Right. That's
really.
not even enough.
It's
right.
not enough. It's
right.
like if you believe whatever you believe, you're here. This is one shot you got, man, and and your legacy.
Yeah.
Because most people are having kids.
Right.
If your legacy is of that ignorance,
right,
that you wouldn't even mentally put the effort in to try to understand your fellow man, why are you even here?
What's the point?
You're taking up air someone else could be breathing.
Right.
Sorry. That's how I feel.
I 100% agree with you, and I believe that, unfortunately, because it's the easy way, intellectually, I always say, the phrase I like to use is intellectual laziness.
Yes.
It is intellectually lazy to believe that all of any group is one thing, because that's just not a thing. That doesn't make any. That doesn't exist. So we're
so quick to group, though. That's the thing I don't understand.
Yeah.
That's the one thing my father was so good about this when I was younger, because it drove him crazy too. Like he just, we're in the Scouts. He says, but that's just an organization.
Yeah.
You're not a Boy Scout, and he's not a Boy Scout. So the kid over here who's involved in the church and the altar boys, you're not an altar boy. You're a Boy Scout. No, you're none of those things. You're labeling yourself.
Right.
That's your friend.
Right.
You belong to different associations.
Right.
Because you choose to.
Yep. It's just something, but it's hard for people to recognize that. It's hard for people to recognize that people aren't simply an amalgamation of their associations. It's not. I am not.
But why? Why do you think?
Because putting people in boxes makes life easier. It's
Does it?
Because it's complex. Yeah, it's actually taxing emotionally and intellectually to have to understand the nuances in a person. So like,
I must be strange. I find that stuff fascinating.
Well,
I find that fascinating.
But people like you and I who want to grow intellectually, we get off on that.
Absolutely.
But that's not everyone.
Okay.
Everyone. So many people who are just very, very concrete thinkers, it is draining for them to think about, well, wait a minute. Maybe that guy's poor because he had a bad life,
right?
Not because he's lazy, because that's the one that actually bothers me more than any, is that many people assume poor people are just lazy, And I'm like, listen, I've been poor. I promise you I expended more energy being poor than I am right now.
Absolutely. But I mean, I grew up in this town. The town you're in right now, I grew up in this town.
Okay.
And it was, we had nothing.
Yeah.
The point being, I don't wear it as a badge. I'm just telling you, I watched guys and gals break their bodies and their minds and their souls to take care of their kids, and they died in these mills.
Right.
They were hardworking people.
And that's hardworking folks.
So that's in my head. When I think about hard physical labor, I knew I didn't want to do that because it didn't have a great outcome for them.
Right.
But God bless them for doing it.
Exactly. And the last thing you could ever call them in earnest is lazy. Because, you go to your average janitor or mill worker or, day laborer, any of those folks, they are hard-working people. They get up every morning and go
in earnest.
And they just try to survive and take care of their families. But people who aren't in that life will say, "Look at those lazy people. They're poor because they're lazy. They're poor because of their decisions."
That's intellectual laziness.
Yeah, that's intellectual, and it's because here's the problem. The myth of meritocracy is that people want to believe that in America you will get what you deserve. So that, because that's the idea of meritocracy is if it's the hardest working, the best and the brightest among us will succeed. They will rise to the top. And so the idea is if I am successful, it is because I deserve that success. That means if that's true, your lack of success, you deserve that too. Now I am absolved of any guilt that comes from recognizing that your struggle is kind of unfair. So when I say to you, "Hey, I'm being oppressed, could you help me?" Nah, man, like I got what I deserved, you get what you deserve.
That's pure capitalism too in its essence,
That's
right?
exactly
pure
right.
Capitalism.
And the purest of capitalism is I will get whatever I can get. You get whatever you get.
Every man for himself.
Good luck with that.
Right.
And so if you take a step back and recognize, wait a minute, the system is rigged on some level.
Absolutely.
And if I'm born a woman.
On a lot of levels.
On a lot of levels. If I'm born a woman, I'm going to make 70 cents on the dollar. And so that puts me at a little bit of a disadvantage. And if I don't want to think about that because then I've got to decide whether or not to absolve myself of some of that privilege that I was born with.
Yeah, it'd be a fascinating conversation for people in your field because you think about the reality and facts and statistics is what you just talked about,
right?
And then the converse would be, but that's so motivational when you put qualifiers in there.
Right.
How does that affect production based upon?
Yep. Yeah.
It's a really fascinating conversation.
It's really, really complex because to think about how we fix this, you're right. It's like, all right, well then what are we going to do?
It's a good conversation.
Yeah. But what I would say is all we have to do is be honest.
No question.
We have to just be honest and realistic about the fact that, okay, this system is not a true meritocracy.
No, because opportunity is not equal for all.
Right.
And that's with any system anywhere. It cannot be judged on pure unbridled capitalism because the opportunity is not the same.
Right. And the only thing that I have to do to be reflective and honest about that is to say, okay, I was born male, relatively intelligent, pretty articulate. That gives me a set of advantages. I'm going to use those advantages for the greater good. Now we're good. Now we can call it even because I'm not simply saying I'm going to get benefits from me.
I get it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because I can say, look, I look at my life. I have been impacted by racism in ways that we could have a whole other show about the racism I've lived through. But I also recognize, even though I recognize that part, I recognize that, me having a PhD in psychology and being black at the same time opens up a million doors for me, because there aren't a lot of people that look like me that have the credentials that I have. And so I it's very marketable. And so I'll take the good with the bad, so to speak. I do not have to worry about my physical safety or being abused in any, in the way that many women feel daily. And so I'll take the good with the bad. And what I will do is I will use my privileges, whatever they are, and I will attempt at every turn to help someone who doesn't have those privileges.
Right.
And I can't make anyone do the same for me, but there are people who have.
God, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And I would venture to say that if you are if you're in your mid-30s, 40s, 50s, and lived on this earth for a particular period of time, and you cannot look back and honestly say that you have not benefited from the generosity, help of other people with them asking nothing in return,
that's right,
then shame on you, because you really are not in touch with reality.
Right. That's right. There's no way that you could say, I picked myself up by my bootstraps and that was that. That is
and
not.
I did it all alone.
Right.
I did it on my own.
I guarantee you that's not what happened.
Right.
And so if I ever become a millionaire, I'm not a millionaire, but if I ever become a millionaire, I will be able to theoretically say I'm a self-made man because I was poor.
Right.
And I'm on the way. Right. I can kind of see, mathematically, I can see the trajectory.
Right.
But what I will say is, there's no way for me to construe that as a solo endeavor.
Right.
Because
why can't people see that? Because that drives me insane.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like I've worked through a lot of interesting times.
Right.
But number one, I don't wear it as a badge.
Yep.
Like, I don't wear it as a badge. I don't think that's healthy.
Right.
But number two, I'm absolutely open to the conversation that I had a lot of help.
Right.
And for me to not acknowledge that is not only disingenuous, it doesn't help the greater good in other generations coming up behind me.
Well, but think about the cognitive dissonance that comes along with accepting that, right? If I say that if I'm wealthy, if I'm like wildly successful, and I acknowledge that part of my success is I was born in the right situation, or all the different things that gave me advantages, then I have to recognize that there are people out there in the world who are not winning because of where they were born and how they were born.
There's no question.
Right? But what that means is, oh man, that means it's not fair. That means it wasn't just my hard work. It's not truly that I'm better than them.
It's called humility.
That's right. And so, a client asked me one time.
It's not hard.
Well, it's hard because people don't want to be humble. People don't want to. And here's the thing. I don't like saying I'm humble. I'm not humble. I don't believe in that kind of sentiment, because I'm a firm believer in recognizing where you are.
Yeah, and being happy with the accomplishment. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm very, very proud of what I've been able to accomplish. But what I've taught people this. You'll never hear anyone who likes themselves more than I like me. I love me some me. I think I'm like a really cool person. But what I will tell you in a heartbeat is, it's not logical for me to believe that my success comes from me.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Because if that's the case, I know a lot of people who should be wildly successful. You know what I mean? Like, they work harder than me. They're smarter than me. I could go on and on.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense that it's about me. The only thing that makes sense for me is my particular skill set is of use to the universe in these different ways.
Right.
And I'm going to use those skills to help everyone around me.
Yeah.
It can't be about me.
Right.
Because if it's about me, then I've missed the point.
Got it. No, I totally get that. And I think that it also comes to the acceptance that it's a unique journey for everybody.
Right.
With unique events which give you opportunity to change your direction.
Right.
All the time.
All the time. And I truly believe, I want to believe, I optimistically, maybe naively want to believe that anyone on earth has the ability to create success for themselves if they figure out how their tools can be of value to the people around them. That's all it is. My success came when I figured out that, oh, my gift, if I use it in this way, people pay for that.
Right.
You know, I'm good at understanding your emotional experience. That's my gift. I understand when I look in your eyes and I say I get it, you'll know that I really do get it. For whatever reason, emotional intelligence is what I have. And that is a marketable skill. Just like dunking a basketball is a marketable skill.
Correct.
And so it just so happens that if you put my skill set in a certain setting, you can actually make money at it. And cool, I'll do that. I'll help people. I'll make some money. And if my plan comes to fruition, I'll help a lot of people around me.
Yeah, and that's kind of what success is based upon. I mean, if you have all the tools, that's one thing. But if you don't know how to use them correctly then take advantage in a good way of opportunities as they present themselves.
That's the formula.
That's the formula.
You have to figure out what you're good at, and then you have to seize the opportunity when the opportunity arises.
That's it. Seize the opportunity.
And
effectively.
Right. And you know, I get it. People will say, yeah, but that opportunity doesn't always come. And I don't negate that. There are people who never get the opportunity that could take them to the next level.
Right.
But that's also why I make the attempt at giving the opportunity anytime I can. You know, I have, you know, when I need little things, like when I wanted to build a patio. I built like a stone patio in my backyard. And I just put out a call. I need someone who wants to make some money. Anybody who needs to make some money, because I don't want to carry all these stones. So, you know, so like somebody come carry these stones and help me dig up this dirt. And somebody out there is going to all of a sudden be making money today.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And they might figure out, oh, I'm good at this. I'm strong. I'm young. I've got energy. Now, you know, next thing you know, they're building a business on that.
That's opportunity.
Right.
Of experience.
Creating opportunity. That's all.
Moments.
Yeah.
Because the moments is going to come and go. It's what you do in that moment.
That's right.
And that's a sophisticated way of living your life.
Yeah.
By taking advantage of opportunities in unique ways.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And I will say, I think it's important to recognize that everybody talks about all men are created equal. That's not true. Everyone's not created equal. Everyone's not the same. Everyone doesn't have the same skill set.
Thank goodness, though.
Exactly. Right. And so the fact of the matter is, LeBron James was born with an uncanny ability to use his body.
Jordan's still better.
and Jordan is a perfect example. I could dribble, I could practice, I could sit in the gym all day, every day for the next 10 years, and I would still not be anywhere near
like Mike.
Right. It's not going to happen. And so everyone's not created equal.
Right.
But if I'm comparing myself to Michael or LeBron, that's where I get myself in trouble. And I start saying,
humans do that.
Yes. If I'm saying it's unfair that they pay millions for dribbling basketballs and they pay therapists $100 an hour, that's not fair. Well, then, yeah, I'm going to be unhappy. But it actually doesn't matter to me what they pay because I don't dribble basketballs well. You know what I mean?
Right. That's where that whole word fair left unchecked and used wrong can really screw up a society.
Yep. Because it's not about fairness.
Because the word is it's misconstrued.
Yep.
On both sides.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially on the extremes of both sides. Would you not agree?
Absolutely. And it's the problem is that we have a culture where we feel like things are supposed to be fair.
Right.
And so you get all upset. But there's nowhere is it said that we're supposed to be fair. We're supposed to be kind.
Right.
We're supposed to be loving. But fair, I don't even know what that would look like. And so what
I don't know either.
Yeah, so what I say is, you know,
we're not built that way.
Right. It doesn't work that way. So when you figure out what your gift is and you figure out how you can capitalize on it. My only suggestion is just remember that it's not always just about you. So if your show blows up and you make a bunch of money, do me a favor, call me, have me back on the show, have all your followers see. That's it. Of
course, that's already a program. I think it comes to, and that's where I think people either get it in life in this regard. They either get it or they don't get it. When it really is all about them, that view is so myopic. That has to really frustrate you in the field you're in. Have you ever sat with clients, and no particulars, but have you ever sat with clients, doctor, and as they're telling you all these problems, and you want to hear, right? You're great listeners. I get it. But one of the first observations has to be, wow, this person is so selfish.
Yeah.
Maybe not even in a hurtful way, just like
Yes.
Everything is about how they're being affected, what someone did to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's funny that you say that because you would think that would happen in a clinical setting more. And the reason it doesn't is my job is to see the world through your eyes when you come to see me. So when you come to my office, even though I may recognize that your view is very selfish, my job while you're with me is to jump into your view and see the world that way.
Okay.
And so it allows me to recognize why you're doing it. And so then I'm not as frustrated with you.
Okay.
Because oftentimes what happens is if you peel back all the layers, you realize it's just because they're hurt. That people get defensive when they're hurt.
Okay.
And people get selfish when they're hurt. What's more difficult for me is when I'm looking at the world, when I look at politicians and the political landscape and stuff like that, that's when it's frustrating because I'm like, how is it that we don't see this? How is it that everyone doesn't see how messed up this is? Like, how can you be saying that you feel okay about what's happening here? How could you? This is not a good thing that people are acting in the way that they're acting. That's what's difficult. What's difficult is for me because, it's like, a plumber could come over to your house and they hear when you turn on the sink, they hear the pounding in your pipes and they're going, man, there's something, I really wish I could get into those pipes because there's something going on down there. Right. Me, when I see people doing things that they're doing in their world, I'm like, oh my goodness. I want to say, let me talk to you for like a little, you know what I mean? Like, come sit down with me. Let's talk because I want to show you something that you're not seeing. But it doesn't work that way. You can't.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
All right. So let's wrap it up with this last question for you. So this is where, as a young person, I was very confused, and I got it straightened out as an adult. But I think some people never get it straightened out, and that is that we're all raised around philosophy.
Right.
Most of us had parents that felt a certain way on things, not just politics, just life in general.
In general.
And then you form your own philosophy as you get older.
Yeah.
And it does harken back a little bit to the extreme thing, but when I was raised in this town, this was a heavily Democratic town.
Yeah.
And I had a Republican father, which was very strange.
Okay.
Very interesting. And I was kind of interested in this stuff.
Okay.
So which made it even weirder.
Yeah.
Very liberal-minded social studies teacher who I loved. I mean, I was getting it from all sides.
Yeah.
The liberal platform had certain tenets in it. The Democratic platform wasn't even liberal. It was back then. I didn't know what liberal was or conservative. It was Republican
versus Democrat.
All right. There was litmus tests on both sides.
Yes.
And I learned that word litmus at a young age that I wish I wouldn't have. But it was, my mother and her family wanted to vote Democratic for Carter or whoever it was. I'm dating myself now.
Yep.
And we would go to school and learn this stuff, civics. And I got the Democratic platform. And then, of course, my father was supposed to get me the Republican platform to look at. I never got a copy of it, but I knew what it was.
Okay.
So I was raised a Catholic. I was raised a Christian, a Catholic. Abortion was wrong. Yeah. But my mother's on a party where abortion rights are at the very forefront.
Yeah.
I'm also raised a Catholic where you're taught never to kill anybody.
Right.
And the Republicans got a platform that has the states allowed to kill a prisoner.
Yeah.
Those litmus tests were really screwed up in my mind as a young person.
Okay.
And they've weighed on me my whole life because there was always exceptions that could never be articulated to me as a child. And I think that a lot of the people as adults who make their political decisions are using the same problems we all probably went through trying to understand everything, but not seeking out the explanations why litmus tests are not a good idea.
Right.
And they're using litmus tests or one issues to grab onto a side and then root for them like they're the goddamn Yankees.
Yes.
It's not the Red Sox versus the Yankees here in this election. It's not. But we're rooting it as it's a, and we've done it in such a way where we've grabbed onto, there's little mini litmus tests all throughout, and they go to what you believe is not a core belief, but it's some specialized interest that you have.
Yes.
You grab onto that, although the rest of the platform might be fundamentally against everything you believe, but you're a gun rights guy.
Yep.
And you're going to vote for that red state thing, but you may disagree with everything.
Right.
And the same thing on the liberal side.
It happens on both sides.
Why are we so susceptible to using litmus tests and then stopping? Like not doing what we're doing today, not fleshing things out, but using that one issue to pick a side and just go for it.
And so I can't say that I understand why it's happening because it's perplexing even to me. But what I'll say is you hit the nail on the head. You couldn't be more right. People are right now, they latch onto one issue and they say, when I ran for office, I would literally have people, I would knock on the door, I'd open the door and people would say, wait, where are you on this? And then I would tell them and they would say, some of them would just close the door or, all right, good. You don't have to tell me anything else. I'm voting for you because of this. And I'm like, so you don't care what kind of a person I am. You don't care about my family or my values. This one issue is where you're going to hang your hat. And it's because people create these false dichotomies. They believe that if you're on this side, you can't be on that side. And it's not true about most things. It's not as simple as that about almost anything.
But they could, okay, Doctor, this is just, I'm sorry, my head wants to explode. I don't know how one-issue voters, one-issue voters, maneuver the rest of their life. Like, why would anybody hire them to do a job? Why would, because they can't be one-issue people through the rest of their life. It takes more critical thinking to maneuver through your life. Right.
But they're not thinking about any of the rest of that stuff. So in other words,
but how can they not be?
So if
I don't get it.
If I say, okay, abortion is the issue upon which I'm going to hang my hat. If you're with me on abortion, then we're good. Mm-hmm. I find out that's why a lot of those voters would say, where are you on this issue? Mm-hmm. And I would tell them, and they didn't ask any other questions because they don't want to know. They don't want to know that we don't agree on those other issues because they're saying, listen.
That's a conversation then.
Right. Yeah.
That's sad.
And
that's sad.
So then what happens if I find out that we agree on this issue and we disagree on that issue? Now I'm in trouble. Now I got some decisions to make. I don't want to think about all that. So I'm going to ask you about my one issue.
I get it.
I don't want to have to think about all that stuff. So we're going to talk about my one issue and that's it.
That's their litmus test.
Yeah, it's laziness. And it's recognizing that and
they're being marketed to because of that.
And that's right.
On all sides.
And now politicians are playing that game. They're going to ring the bell of the one issue that they know is going to get them the most voters, and that's it. And the fact it's the same with music. You'll understand this. Back in the 70s and even into the mid 80s, radio stations weren't specialized. Right, you could listen to the radio. You'd hear Phil Collins, followed by Michael Jackson, followed by the Temptations, followed by the Beatles. Right. On any given station, on any given day.
Right.
But people realized at some point, wait a minute, if I specialize and only play this kind of music, all the people who like this kind of music will follow me for this kind of music. And now
it doesn't last though.
Right. The problem is what happened is radio suddenly became about the biggest hits.
Got it.
And then radio stations were only playing 7 songs. It'd be a rotation. And it's ridiculous. And because variety was no longer what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. We want the biggest hits.
Right. Exactly right.
Rather than I want to appreciate all the music that's out there. Mm-hmm. No, play me the top hits. And just play them over and over again.
That's a prime example of how lazy we've become.
That's right.
And that's probably why it's so hard for young musical artists to break through.
Right. Because today, the major media players, the radio stations, they will have their list of 30 songs that they're going to play, and they'll play them in a different variety. And every now and again, they'll throw in a throwback that was on the list 2 years ago. But they're not just playing the interesting and kind of like, oh, check out this new artist that I heard on Spotify. Let's hear. They're not doing that.
No, there's no money in that.
No, there's no money. I'm going to play the crap out of the top 20 songs, and that's what I'm going to do.
Predictability.
Right.
There's a formula. They write with a formula.
That's right. And so why would I take a chance on songs you might not like?
Yeah, I get it.
And
now that you put it in that context, I get it.
It's sad because I remember back when I was young, I heard everything on the radio.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that was, again, growing up in a diverse community.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. I mean, in Pittsburgh, you had like a rock station, and then it was R&B, but it really was the beginning of hip hop.
Yep.
Yes, it was Whammo. It was DVE, and then there was a top 40, but there was all this crossover,
right?
And there was it wasn't so segmented that it was too specific,
right? Yeah, you got to figure just with Whammo, B94, and DVE.
Yep.
You might be more likely to hear the Eagles on DVE, but they're all gonna play the hit. You know what I mean?
Exactly right. There's a lot of absolutely.
Because I only know who Phil Collins and all those guys are because Whammo had to have played them at some point.
Absolutely right.
Because that's the only radio station.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I just think that going back to the voter thing, I just don't know to me, the fascination of life. My fascination with life comes from, and learning is a cliche word, but every day if I'm learning about something I don't know, that's the essence of learning, right? Right. If I'm not exposed to that, what a shitty way to live.
What are you doing? Yeah.
I don't want to be surrounded by a lot of like-minded people all the time. There's no fun in that.
Right. A bunch of yes men. It's a terrible way to live. It's a terrible way to live, and
it's a comforting way to live for some, right?
Yes,
because it goes against the fear.
Right. So you feel some comfort by being around people who make you feel safe. I want challenge.
That's weird.
I don't want that safety. That safety bores me. Mm-hmm. And intellectuals seek that challenge, but there are lots of folks who don't want that challenge. It makes their head hurt.
I think people want more than they're being spoon-fed. Why are long-form conversations, why do they work? They work because I feel people are craving more than a soundbite. Like we talk about being, we're the anti-soundbite. Yep. That's our little stick. We're the anti-soundbite.
Yeah.
This is good. People buy into it, and I can tell by the playthroughs on our statistics.
Yeah.
People are buying in.
People are really listening.
So they're interested in a relaxed format.
Right.
We're giving them that, but more importantly, I think humans crave more.
Yeah.
So they're craving depth, Doctor, and I don't know if they're getting it in most media now.
Right. I agree. And I think the issue is, again, it goes back to capitalism. Because if I have a major media platform, if I have a television network, I can't spend too much time and money broadening our horizons and trying new things because I've spent too much money on these shows.
Got it.
I need to capitalize. I need my return on investment. Yeah. So I need the heavy hitters and I need to win big. Mm-hmm. And so whereas you and I can try things because the stakes are low,
right?
They're saying, listen, right. You know how much airtime costs?
I know.
So they're like, we're gonna get in and out. Yeah. We're gonna make a bunch of money.
Yeah, I get it.
Whereas we're like, let's just see what happens. It'll be fun.
Absolutely. Well, there's more to it than money. There's, money's a component of everything in life, but they're really, you and I both are not doing this.
Yes, you're right.
With monetary gain at the forefront.
Right.
Because if we are, we're idiots.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you're wasting your time.
So there has to be something for the greater good and the connectivity of the human experience.
Right. And I'll tell you what, and I'll use this as an opportunity for a shameless plug.
Please do.
So during the pandemic, all the downtime that I've had, it inspired me to try something new. So Housecall has been so much fun, and I've been enjoying doing that. But I wanted something else to do, so I created a vlog. So I have this new, it's a parenting vlog. I have this thing where, so I'm behind the camera, I'm videotaping my experiences with my kids, and I put it on YouTube.
Okay.
And I reflect on it. It's called Fatherhood on the Back Nine. So
how many episodes you have?
Ooh, there are probably now 16 or 17.
How did I miss this?
Yeah.
Is it in the same channel?
No, it's not.
That's why.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't see it. Okay.
So and that's actually why I mentioned it, because I know lots of people know about Housecall, and they have no idea that I'm doing this other thing.
Okay.
But the reason was, I was like, I'm just having fun, and it became a creative outlet for me.
Sure.
And so my point in that is, there is a way for us to do things that are just purely for the joy of doing it.
Amen.
And so I now found a way to create content that forces me to spend time with my kids, because in order for me to have the next episode, I got to go do something fun with my kids, right?
Absolutely.
So there's a win there, and I'm enjoying it because it allows me, I create the music that goes into it, all that stuff. So now I'm getting my creative fix out of it. So there's another win.
That's very cool.
And I'm okay with spending money on that, because it's like, well, if I would take a class in painting, I'd spend money. If I would, you know what I mean?
Absolutely right.
But the thing is, if I ever become wildly successful doing that, I will be able to say, I did that without seeking money. I did it for the joy of it. And in my same thing with
that's
this.
That's the root. I say that all the time.
You're doing something.
It happens.
Right. And I say that if we could have more of that, right? Because let's face it, the TV networks, they want to make money.
Absolutely right. Well, they're not interested in this. They still believe that you can't, or the attention spans are so infinitesimally small.
Yep.
They can't afford to put a program on
this. That's right.
Meaning they actually can. They won't.
They won't. Right. Because, like, if you think about it, you know, like Charlie Rose, who was a great interviewer, those are just relaxed conversations.
No question.
But that's not popular these days.
No.
That's not, and what I want.
But it worked then. Why would they think it wouldn't work now?
Unfortunately, I think it definitely would work. And I think they're saying we wouldn't make as much money. It wouldn't be as profitable.
That has to be the linchpin.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not that it wouldn't work.
Right.
It's that it wouldn't make someone wildly wealthy.
And I know that you're not really doubting the Joe Rogan. We've generally talked about it.
Yep.
The nuts and bolts of him. That's my challenge for you, just to dive in a little bit
for
your next visit.
I have to check him out.
He was basically a rather successful comedian. I think in the late '80s and '90s, he was the host of Fear Factor.
I remember. Yep.
And he's an MMA.
Yep.
He does the announcing.
Right.
And he started this podcast about 8-9 years ago, where there wasn't anything but just having fun.
Okay.
Putting other comedians on.
That was the only goal, was just...
It's almost unwatchable if I go back and watch the early ones, because it's just, and it was a different time.
Okay.
And I don't know a lot about comedians. I just don't. It gravitated into inviting more of the people that he was in his sphere.
Okay.
And it just got legs. And the whole concept was that limited commercialism in it, no break in the middle for commercials.
Yeah.
But he was getting A-listers, people that the public found very interesting, but he came from a very pragmatic stance. And that's why I think he's enjoyable.
Yeah.
Because he certainly has made great money because of it. But it started, I don't believe any real dream of monetizing it.
Yeah.
So it organically started.
It just happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's so amazing. And that format has launched this show and probably hundreds of other ones across the countries, doing the similar kind of format, but just maybe for local areas. Like we're Southwestern PA based.
Yep.
But he started organically, Doctor, and I think that's what's so great about, inspiring to me.
And honestly, that's what I love about. That's the one thing that I love about the current technology age with YouTube and Spotify and other platforms that are out there, it makes it so that it is feasible for you and I to just put something up there and see who likes it. And it doesn't have to be completely commercialized and about extracting value. It can be about, I just want to have conversations with like-minded people. And so,
or not like-minded people.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I mean, because
and that can be just as much fun and just as interesting.
Absolutely.
And
don't come up. My thing was, I want my guests to be themselves.
Right.
So they have an agenda, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
Because I just want them to be themselves. Everybody has their own, but I want to come at the show with little or no, not much of me, because the concept is my guest. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. It does.
And it's hard because I have engaging conversations here, and I think I want questions answered, and you're just the person to do it for me. So I am engaged with it personally, but it really is about my guest.
But what I like is that you give people a blank slate and you say, let's just go. Let's see what happens. And the benefit of the YouTube era is that we can do this, and that it's not cost prohibitive. And just like when the indie music world blew up in the 90s, and then all of a sudden you had these grunge bands and hip hop acts that were like in their garages, in their basements. They're now at the forefront because you remove the big wigs and let's just see what happens. And
it's what the people wanted.
And I think that's what's happening today.
I hope.
Yeah.
My friend, this is great.
Absolutely.
Thank you for giving me so much of your time.
No problem.
I appreciate it. And please, I'm ready for round 3 or pretty soon.
Yeah. Let me know and I'll put the date in my I'll actually put the date in my calendar.
Again, a reminder how everybody can reach you, please.
Yes, please. So do me a favor and go check out on YouTube or Facebook. You can check out Housecall with Dr. Rueben Brock. And also my newest endeavor on YouTube is Fatherhood on the Back Nine. Both of them are near and dear to my heart. These are windows into my way of seeing the world.
Right.
And if you like it, send me a message. I'm the one who manages
subscribe.
this. Yeah, please do subscribe, watch videos, and because I really do believe that it's going to be through connections with people like you, so other content creators and their audiences. That's how we're gonna.
Oh, there's no question.
Yeah, that's how we get there.
We're all rise up together.
Yes,
absolutely. Thank you, Doctor.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me. Dr. Rueben Brock.
All right,
we are out.